Hello. I do believe we are streaming right now with my new lighting setup. Preferably it's okay. I'm not sure yet. Still feeling it out. Still not quite exactly center. This room's very tight. Gotta make do with what we got. So here's hoping it works. I know it definitely is casting shadows over the right part of my face, which is always good. Welcome. So let's see. Obviously, I have a little delay on my end, so I can't see who's on chat and who isn't. But if you saw the title of this stream, you know it's gonna be a bit of a free form tonight. Now, I initially said that we're gonna be talking about bad X-Men movie takes. I forgot my ring, but I have no idea what that entails yet because I haven't looked at any of the things I've prepared for today. You're gonna be discovering it right alongside me, so my reactions will be quite authentic. So there you go. As of yet, I have no idea what we have on chat. Now, this right here is an after dinner drink. It's called a revolver. Never made it before. Definitely a sipper, not really something you're gonna chug too much. Still. Not seeing anything in chat currently. Unfortunately, it looks like everything's a little delayed on my end, but that's okay. Oh well, we'll figure this out as we go. So, obviously, as we usually do, if you have any, what do you call it, really strange perspectives on this one, let me know. I can obviously react to anything. Okay, cool. So, yeah, I'm sorry if I seem a little delayed. It's been a weird day. Weird couple of days, honestly. Seeing a couple Magneto's right in the chat right now. Can't argue with you on that one. Yeah, it's been chaotic the last couple days. Oh, bad take number 999. Wolverine needed to be the main character. Well, can't talk to you about that one. That one, I think X-Men 97 did a great job balancing out Wolverine with everything else. I think we need to keep Wolverine as a side character sometimes. You got my submission. I know it was last minute, but I neglected until last minute. I don't know if I saw that, actually. I don't know if I saw any submission. Again, I haven't checked chat too much. I've mostly been taking recommendations from chat. So on my YouTube channel, obviously, when you're watching right now, I posted a post regarding the stream, asking for any recommendations. I asked around a little bit as well, and we're going to probably poke around there and back. If you have one that you really want me to look at, you can always leave a super chat and force me to look at it, subject me to this nonsense. But there's a couple I've planned out already. All right, cool. Again, a little slow on my end, so I'm not seeing all the chats yet. Oh, through Twitter. Oh, I didn't even check that. I haven't really checked too much Twitter in the last couple of hours, unfortunately. So let's look at the first one. I decided to do some text first in terms of bad written media takes. The first of which was this one. This is typical, isn't it? I decided to look at bounding into comics for a bad take, but apparently Google has told me that bounding into comics is unsafe for my computer, and they've refused to allow it. So, not only unsafe, but dangerous. So, we'll knock that one off. We're not doing bounding into comics, even though they are a gold mine of bad takes. That's okay, man. Let me take a look at that real quick while we're all getting comfortable here. I see. All right, let me open that. Now I see Sebastian. Let me open this up real quick. Okay. Here we go. So, this was DM'd to us by in chat, Sebastian in chat. Fenrir the Ice Wolf on Twitter writes, so here we go. So it's a response to a tweet from Knion. Anyway, the showrunner of X-Men 97 loudly complained about all the changes Netflix was making to The Witcher. His peers tried to destroy his career for that. And that's a whole other discussion. I don't necessarily know that. And again, Bo, we don't know why he was fired from The Witcher or from X-Men 97. So I hesitant to say that his peers tried to destroy his career because we don't really know the whole story. We just know bits and pieces. Anyway, but that's beside the point. Even though I love his work on X-Men 97, I am hesitant to ever say that anyone should be rehired until we know exactly why they were fired in the first place. Adjust my mic slightly. Hope I didn't leave any too many loud bangs or pops. Fenrir the Ice Wolf. Didn't he also come out after getting the show saying he's happy because he'll make it about his experience as a gay man in America and turn the X-Men into activists? I'm seriously asking. Okay, so I don't know if he said that. I don't have every quote from this guy on my back pocket, but I mean, he is a gay man. He drew from personal experience, so yeah, he's going to lift from that when working on his production. That's important to do. Yeah, so he might have done that. I have no idea. I'm seriously asking. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know if that's a bad take so much as it's kind of that soft, not really taking a firm stance in anything. A lot of these kinds of takes where they're just asking questions, they usually are leading questions that lead to a certain point, right? But the problem is, until they make that hardcore point, you know what they're actually saying. But I digress. Anyway, that's a good starting bad take, Sebastian. It's a good start. It'll get us warmed up as we dive into the deep end of the pool. Let's look at some chat here. Proof that misinformation is very dangerous. Yeah, again, misinformation is very dangerous. We have a pretty fair theory based on yeah. So basically, from what we know, Bo DeMaio, he is apparently very difficult to work with. From what we understand, that can mean either he creates a hostile work environment, or he can be very... Oh, so Sebastian... Oh, so the Fenrir guy is an infamous guy who hates the woke stuff. Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah, I didn't recognize the name. Or if I've interacted with him, I probably... I interact with a lot of weird people on Twitter. And frankly, a lot of the time with the really strange ones, they go in one ear and out the other. I just forget they even exist. Anyway. Speaking of bad people on Twitter, though, one thing that did not get filtered out by Google is... this site, Fandom Pulse. Now, Fandom Pulse, if you are not aware, let me adjust my face. Let me adjust my face real quick so you can see this. Fandom Pulse is, in case you don't know it, it is a website that is created by one John Del Azaz, or Araz, whatever you say his name. He is a right-wing grifter of, he's been around for a while in a lot of different spaces. He decided to continue cashing in on the grift that is the internet by creating this poorly designed site called Fandom Pulse. It's not a really great design. I mean, it's very simple, but it's at least it's not dangerous like Bounding into Comics. And he's posted a bunch of different bad takes here that I want to take a look at. This is the beginning. I know these are going to be guaranteed bad takes. And we can read through a few of his articles, all of which are written. No, John Del Araz. There we go. Yeah. So let's start with the obviously easy one to disprove. X-Men 97 flops. Disney Plus is a dead streaming platform. Let's look at that real quick. And once we get through a few written articles as the night goes on, we're going to move on to some video. I have a couple videos already keyed up that we can dive right in that I have not seen. Maybe we'll get through one or two. Anyway, X-Men 97 flops. Disney Plus is a dead streaming platform. Okay. Let me see how many people actually subscribe to Disney Plus real quick. Disney Plus subscribers total. Okay, so for comparison's sake, let's have a side-by-side discussion here. According to the Statista, this is as of May 8th, so about 13 days ago. Second quarter of 2024, the number of global Disney Plus subscribers amounted to 153.6 million. Now, this marked a decline of around 4 million compared to the same quarter of the previous year, and the further price increases of the service in October 2023. It did drop year over year. However, 153 million people is nothing to scoff at. That's a large number of subscribers. And that's important to note. So let's talk about this. Let's see their argument for it flopping. So here we go. In spite of mostly positive reviews from both sides of the culture war, Disney's X-Men 97 appears to be a complete flop in terms of viewership. For weeks now, the show hasn't managed to break into the Nielsen top 10 rankings, making it the worst performing Marvel show on Disney+. In spite of initial news that the show had managed to draw in 4 million views for its debut episode, which was one of the most viewed premieres for a Disney Plus show, the series doesn't seem to be retaining viewers. Worse yet, the show doesn't seem to have brought in new subscribers or given any reason for old subscribers to renew. Although the show does appear to be a faithful adaptation, it appears that that's not enough to stop Disney Plus's decline. There are reasons why the show may have done much more. Okay, so here is the... Okay, so this is not Nielsen. This is the Samba TV rankings, which only amounts for a small number of TVs and families. Now, people are commenting in the comments that Nielsen does not account for streaming numbers. I do not know if that's true or not. I'm inclined to believe that because of the basis of how it's run. But anyway, so Samba TV, Roadhouse, Shogun, The Gentleman, Irish Wish, Homicide, 3 by Problem, Damsel, Bluey, Taylor Swift, and Halo 2. Of all of these, Bluey is the only piece of animation to break in the top 10 in total. Now, animation typically... Oh, we have a super chat. Oh, wow, nice super chat. So, Meow Neon, thank you for the super chat. Silly question for me, but how do you view Whedon's astonishing X-Men run? I feel that it was a step back to make them primarily a superhero group instead of a mutants' rights group as pushed in Morrison's run. Thank you for the question. It's actually a really interesting question. I do want to talk about that. Astonishing X-Men is Joss Whedon's run. I think I have one of the trade paperbacks behind me. It's a good run. I always remember the Cure storyline from that a lot, mainly because of how it fed into X-Men 3 a lot. I also do love how they put Kitty Pryde front and center. She's always been my favorite X-Men. And Whedon, for all of his faults, for a lot of his faults, honestly. One of the reasons why people thought Whedon was a good writer and director for a while was because he always centered female protagonists. He was also a bit of a sex pest, but that's beside the point. I really like Whedon's run on X-Men. I think it's a solid run. I don't think it's great, and I think some of the petty rivalries, like between Emma Frost and Jean Grey, I think it's really weird. I like the whole thing with Cerebro. Not Cerebro, the Danger Room. I like that whole arc. I don't like how it ends with Kitty Pryde being sucked into an asteroid for an extended period of time. That really bothered me. I think it was a cool feat, but I don't like how it got rid of Kitty Pryde for so long in the run. I think they brought back Colossus, though. That was pretty cool. But I think overall it's a good run. In comparison to how it works as a superhero story versus as a mutants' rights story, I think that it was definitely less effective than Morrison's run, which I think is iconic for a number of reasons. Again, like you said, it's focused more on mutant kind. It focused more on problems that mutants face. There were elements, though, dealing with evolution, and I think the Cure storyline began with that whole element, but the idea of a mutant cure, I feel like it's a concept that is compelling, but in execution is really wonky. And it does bring in S.H.I.E.L.D. and S.W.O.R.D. and all that, and I like it. It was a good run, but my memory of it is less clear than the Morrison run. So I think that amounts to something that it felt more generic. And it's not as infamous, I think, as the Chuck Austin run. Is that the one where Nightcrawler becomes the Pope or is trying to become the Pope? I think that run is memorable for how wonky it is. But I think Whedon's Astonishing run's okay. But again, I remember the bits that mattered to me. The problem is, for me, I remember the bits that, from my experience with the characters, stand out the most. Kitty Pryde, Colossus coming back, Beast discussing his mutations, his increasing mutations, and, of course, how it connects to the films and their adaptations. All right, so thank you for the comment. If you have any more questions, please leave a super chat. I will be sure to answer it. But yeah, Nielsen ratings aren't complete and Samba ratings aren't complete. So let's look right here. This makes history for the Disney Plus performing worse than Miss Marvel and What If, which both at least had top 10. Again, these ratings are not incomplete, and he's just talking. Impossible to... Okay, so here's something he says right here. Okay. Even with the more positive reviews that... Let me make my screen a little bigger, by the way, so you can actually see what I'm reading here. There we go. So even with the positive reviews that came in after the debut in March, the brand appeared to already be tainted. For some, it was best just not to watch since they were being told not... Who told them not to? Anyway. And others lost interest in another culture war battle over the cartoon. No one was really fighting a culture war over the cartoon except for you guys, but I digress. And while the initial premiere was viewed by subscribers of Disney Plus was popular for the platform, it seems not to have retained all those initial viewers who have seemed to lost interest in keeping up with the show weekly. Meanwhile, more diehard fans of the comics, who would be the target audience for a show that's directly adapting storylines, have already given plenty of reason not to give Disney another cent. Yeah, but they still watch. Disney's problem with Marvel is not the hardcore audience. They show up. The problem is the casual audience, keeping people interested outside of the core superhero demographic. Now, let's take this with a dose of reality, shall we? X-Men 97 Disney Plus viewership. Let's review a little bit more from a different source. So not Fandom Pulse, who is obviously a little biased here. Let's take a look at Deadline. Deadline right here reports exclusive. Oh, X-Men Ooh, hang on, this is new. I had no idea. X-Men movie at Marvel Studios gains momentum as Michael Leslie comes in as a screenwriter. That's cool. That's breaking news. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Let me talk about that right now, actually. It's exciting. X-Men movie at Marvel Studios gains momentum as Michael Leslie comes in on as a screenwriter. Okay, cool. Who is this guy? This is new. I haven't seen this. This is just came out. Probably minutes ago, I imagine. Yeah, minutes ago. Oh, no, about a few hours ago. Okay, so this is old news for everyone else. This is the first time I'm seeing it. Following the success of the animated 1997, Marvel Studios is now ramping up things with its live-action X-Men movie with Hunger Games, Ballad for Songbirds and Snakes, Scribe, Michael Leslie, Negotiations, Pen movie. Okay, cool. That's exciting. Yeah, she's circled. So, Michael Leslie, he's circled this. Oh. Yeah, so Leslie's circled the role for a while. I've seen that name circulated a few times. Yeah, they're still writing it, so it's not going to come out tomorrow, but it's exciting news. And of course, Deadpool and Wolverine's coming out this summer. Ticket sales are through the roof, apparently. Yeah, this is cool. That's good. I like that. Anyway, so 97. Let's talk about that for a second. And of course, Shogun ads are in the corner here. If you haven't seen Shogun, really watch Shogun. That show's fantastic. Finale of X-Men 97 is a promising track record. Okay, so the finale of X-Men 97 was watched by 3.5 million viewers globally in the first 5 days of the streaming. So it has had a big hit. It premiered with 4 million, ends at 3.5 million. That means it lost a total of 0.5 million viewers, which is pretty good retention for a series released week to week. And, well, they're saying also that viewership had been going consistently over the last 4 episodes to the finale. So some people tune in for the very end. Some people, they come back. That's exciting. It's really good. Exact breakdown of viewership is unclear. And again, it was also revealed that X-Men 97 was the third widest watched original Disney Plus show to release in 2024. So far, third most. That will probably change when the next Star Wars show, The Acolyte, comes out. But that's pretty good. It shows an intense viewership, a large amount of people watched, and that's pretty exciting. Okay, so that's one bad take. Let me go... Did I lose it? I lost it. Anyway, so we're back here. So he's not exactly on par here. So here's another one. Will Marvel's femme-centric X-Men reboot finally kill off the MCU? Let's watch. I'm going to look at one more of these. Which one should I go for? Will Marvel's female-centric X-Men reboot kill off the MCU? Gail Simone lectures X-Men fans on how best to write a Deadpool as a character? Or Disney's Marvel's 97 X-Men 97 goes full gay by having Morph lust after Wolverine in Bo DeMayo's third episode. Chat, which one should I watch? Which of these two? Let me look at some comments as you're telling me. Chuck Austin's run was also the one that briefly Nightcrawler's father, the Satan wannabe Azazel. Yeah, Azazel's weird. Azazel's a weird one. I like how now they have Mystique and that one, first one. Okay. First one, Deadpool, femcentric, full gay. I'm seeing a lot of comments for everything. So let's full gay. Okay, so we got right here first one, Deadpool, femcentric. So 2 for okay, Morph superior to Jean Grey. Morph in Wolverine is superior to Jean and Wolverine. Saying it now, don't at me. That is a hot take, and I respect that. Also Morph. Okay, cool. So Morph is winning this. Gonna give you a couple minutes more before we dive in. Not minutes more, a few seconds more. I am tempted to look at the Morph one. Femcentric. Let's look at Morph then Femcentric. I'm curious about that one too, because I feel like it's gonna be very sexist. All right, so John Araz tells us Disney Marvel X-Men 97. That's a lot of SEO value in one sentence. Goes full gay, as opposed to being half gay, by having Morph lust after Wolverine in Bo DeMayo's third episode. Okay, so let's see what they say. Great ship, by the way. Very clearly. Also, is it gay if Morph is non-binary? I guess they're masked non-binary. So anyway, so glad they retconned Mystique as Kurt's father. Yeah, agreed, 100%. Anyway, X-Men 97 went off the rails for its third episode by putting the LGBTQ agenda on full display through the character of Morph, who has already caused controversy for the show in the way the character has been described as non-binary. Because a shapeshifter is just the most cisgendered thing in the world, isn't it? This episode, co-written by the fired showrunner Bo DeMayo, has taken Marvel to new lows in what was supposed to be children's programming. The children's programming also includes a guy getting skewered with Wolverine's claws and devils coming out of the pits of hell, but I digress. Bo DeMayo stated that the Disney Marvel, as opposed to the Disney Marvel, he really likes the SEO keywords there, brought him in to communicate his experiences as a black gay man as the series was about to premiere. This came with a flurry of bad PR for X-Men 97, which is, you can tell because it's the third most watched thing Disney Plus put out this year. As Morph was revealed in non-binary, which is sparking outrage among Marvel fans. No, it sparked outrage among your people, but I digress. On top of it, one of the lead designers gave an interview about body diversity to virtue signal the show's identity politics. Now, what's so funny about this is that this was written the second week that X-Men 97 was debuting. Keep in mind, first week it had 2 debut episodes, second week was episode 3. So I think that they were still trying to grift that X-Men 97 was a woke show that was going to destroy, X-Men, and not the show that it ultimately became. Notice the tone between the 2 articles I just read. The first one is glowing. He's like, oh, it's a great show, but people lost faith in Disney. Oh, what a shame. And now he's like, this woke show's going to destroy children and ruin your house and burn your crops. Anyway, but yeah, all the kids are watching a show from a sequel to the mid-90s cartoon, naturally. Anyway, so body diversity. Actually, was there any body diversity in X-Men 97? Like, there really wasn't a lot of that. But anyway. Well, X-Men fans were tapping about X-Men 97. Many were assuaged. By the old animated series cartoon. However, it was noted by a critic. Oh, by a critic. Which one, I wonder? That the second episode was a reference to MAGA in January 6th. Yes. Obviously it was. You'd have to be blind not to pick up on that. Good job, John. That's a really good observation you made just now. But like many Disney Marvel properties, X-Men 97 pulled a bait and switch in the third episode. Oh, wow. What's the bait and switch? In the episode, Jean Grey is revealed to be cloned by the Goblin Queen. Again, Goblin Queen is the best part of this episode, and I love that costume. It's fantastic. The Goblin Queen costume that Jean Grey wears is one of the best costumes in modern animation. I will not take questions at this time. The homosexual subtext starts with Morph, as he makes jokes about Rogue and Magneto training in the Danger Room and sexualizes the context about Magneto's stamina while leaning on Wolverine in a feminine... Is it a feminine manner or is it just leaning? Is leaning now feminine, John? Is that how it works? Anyway, Wolverine then goes looking for Jean Grey, and Morph sighs longingly as Wolverine goes away, saying, and then, okay. Even though it's subtle, it gets far more overt and far worse. Showing Beau DeMayo's black gay man agenda on full display. Oh, God. Terrible. Terrible, terrible. Morph goes into the shower where there's a male who appears to Wolverine. Okay. It's clear that means that homosexual encounter with who he thinks to be Wolverine in the shower before the situation unfolds into a full psychic attack on the X-Men. Yeah, there we go. He is excited to go in that shower. Morph is excited to go in the shower. He's real. Hey, listen, I love how they develop Morph. And let me take a look at Morph right here. So Morph, as you know from the original series, was just a very obscure, very unimportant character until he becomes a traitor for the team and works with Mr. Sinister. But again, from that first season, intermediately throughout the whole show, he wasn't a major deal. Like a lot of people looking back on the X-Men 90 show feel like Morph might have been a bigger deal, much in the same way they think that Bishop was a bigger deal and that Nightcrawler was a bigger deal. We just remember him more because it stands out because the story meant something to us. But it's not like Morph was a huge character in the original story. Not necessarily, anyway. So right now, we have Morph. He's doing his thing. And let's look what John has to say. Many stands of the show were mocking outraged critics. Many stands of the show were mocking outraged critics were overreacting to Morph becoming non-binary, stating it's implied with shapeshifting, which was never the case in 1987, as the word is a much more modern construct. No, it's not. The concept of non-binary identity dates back centuries in other cultures outside of America. And even in America, that was still discussed. But the outraged fandom has proven to be correct yet again, as yet another character in a kid's show has been turned into an overt homosexual in order to push the Hollywood agenda. You can tell this is bullshit because John never writes another article about Morph being gay towards Wolverine after this point in time. You can tell it's all horseshit for that particular reason. But what are you going to do? So, Reaper Killer creator Joe Sontag. What's Reaper Killer? I have no idea who this guy is. They wait to episode 3 to make that non-binary Morph pretty much straight up gay. At least famed creator of Reaper Killer Joe Sontag appreciates Goblin Queen, but I'm going to keep it right here because I really like the image of Goblin Queen. In fact, I'm just going to take a photo of that. I'm going to check that out. Still, I have all my DMs on display here. Other fans voiced similar disgruntled opinions on the change from Morph, who originally was portrayed as a male with no sexual overtones, towards characters like Wolverine. Again, just a weird situation. This being the third episode, one can expect Beau DeMayo to incorporate his... Why does he keep saying this? His black gay man experience. It's just weird. He's clearly overcompensating for the fact that Morph happened to have a thing for Wolverine. And again, this is not the first time Wolverine has had a thing like this before. Very famously in the comics, there's an alternate timeline where Wolverine and Hercules are in a relationship. So Wolverine has done this. And again, for Krakoa, Gene Scott and Cyclops, just saying. Becomes more comfortable making radical change with an already hooked audience. Okay, so yeah. This take is just him upset that Morph is gay, or likes men at least, because non-binary. And I do want to see this femme-centric X-Men thing, because that makes... So again, note right here, this article was written on March 29th, and he doesn't mention X-Men 97 again until May 11th, despite there being an episode every week, and lots of other overt references to LGBTQ stuff in these episodes. He avoided mentioning 97 for about 2 or 3 months. Well, 2 months, because he knew he couldn't grift about it anymore. He knew people liked the show, so he couldn't grift them anymore about the show. He couldn't convince them, oh, hey, it's bad, it's gay, or whatever, because he was a grifter. Anyway, let's look at this X-Men femme-centric reboot thing. And then we're going to move on to video. I know a lot of people here want to watch a video with me. We'll get to that in a second. But first, let me just get this real quick. Will Marvel's femme-centric X-Men reboot finally kill off the MCU? Let's find out what they have to say. New rumors are spreading about the impending X-Men reboot, with speculation swirling about potential shortcomings. Allegedly slated for production by the conclusion of 2025, this reboot has garnered attention for purportedly. Okay. Seeking a writer adept at weaving together drama and comedy, a skill apparently lacking in previous... What's the point? What's the point? This whole paragraph is burying the lead. Get to the point, my dudes. Okay, so here it is. Cosmic Marvel, their tweet. Marvel Studios reportedly want their X-Men reboot to focus on the female characters. They also want to introduce characters we haven't seen in live action yet alongside the original members. So, characters we haven't seen too much of. I'm guessing characters like Jubilee might get a central view, because, I mean, Jubilee has appeared in the movies but hasn't been a central figure. I would hope that Shadowcat, Kitty Pryde, finally has a central role that isn't just her as a MacGuffin. Because as much as I love Elliot Page's portrayal as Shadowcat, it is in no way a definitive interpretation of the character. And the original members, too. So you may get Rogue, you may get Psylocke, who've all appeared, I think, in the movies so far. But, again, this is all speculation. Early on, the script, they just hired the screenwriter today. So there's no script written. They didn't even hire him. He's in talks. There's no script ready. There's no actors ready. There's no anything ready. We have no idea what character is going to be. Though if they include Marrow. Anyway. And again, there's tons of female-centric X-Men. The X-Men have a great cast of ladies. There's so many fantastic women who have been a part of the X-Men over the years. So, I am excited to see what they do. And again, more in terms of characters. So, the impending inclusion of the X-Men in the MCU marks a significant shift. Again, there's no point. Get to the point, John. While hints of mutant presence and stuff ever surfaced, the lackluster Ms. Marvel. Ms. Marvel is one of the best Disney Plus shows they've done so far. I think up there with Moon Knight and WandaVision, and She-Hulk was pretty good too. Forthcoming Deadpool sequel promise. Oh, and of course Echo, which was fantastic. Almost forgot about Echo. Deadpool sequel again. Get to the point, dude. Okay, this article is terrible. Headline: Femme-centric X-Men will kill off the MCU. First paragraph. Talking about Marvel among mainstream audiences, including Thor: Love and Thunder. Again, people are critical of Thor: Love and Thunder. I thought it was okay. I get why people don't like it. But this is not an article about Thor: Love and Thunder. It's about the X-Men. Tweet here about the X-Men. Here's your information. Here's your source. It's right here front and center after your first paragraph. And what do? Blah, 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 blah. Impending shift. Talking about Thor: Love and Thunder again. Talking about Ms. Marvel. Everything but the MCU. Again, the photo is now of Chris Hemsworth and Thor: Love and Thunder. Now, the rumor is the emphasis that would be... Okay, here we go. Finally, third paragraph. Getting to the point. Another rumor is that the emphasis will be put on female mutants in the reboot is not surprising. Wait, hang on. What? Okay, you need to hire an editor for this, because this is really roughly written. Another rumor is that the emphasis will be on female mutants in the reboot is not surprising, considering the MCU's downward slide into the MCU. John, do you know what you know what? No, I'm not going to discuss grammar with you. except for the fact that there's two verbs and it's a run-on sentence, but I digress, writer. Despite the wealth of potential within characters such as Storm, Jean Grey, and Rogue, previous attempts to center female protagonists, as evident by the Marvels, who are not the X-Men, have failed to resonate with audiences to the same degree as their male counterparts. Marvel's doubling down towards female-led storytelling could finally kill the franchise. Except you forget a key difference between the Marvels and the X-Men. One being the X-Men are the X-Men. These are already established characters the audiences have known for decades now. The Marvels, for its faults, and it does have a few faults, was a pretty good movie that was just wrong place, wrong time, essentially. It was a bad time for the movie to come out, and it did really well on streaming, but it flopped in the box office, admittedly. I think the film was really, really good, personally. I enjoyed the Marvels quite a bit. But again, had a really bad marketing campaign. And the character who was the most likable is, of course, Kamala Khan, who is a great character. I don't think audiences were as enraptured with Carol Danvers or Monica Rambeau as they were with Kamala Khan, who is a lot of audiences seem to be drawn towards. And, you know, Ms. Marvel was not a show that was watched as much as other Disney Plus Marvel shows, unfortunately. But Kamala Khan's a good character. And hopefully we'll have much more in the future. I'm hoping they renew her series, because that'd be great. And a lot of Marvel's female heroes are interesting. And it adds every page here. It's ridiculous, man. While the prospect of the X-Men's integration in the MCU undoubtedly stirs excitement among fans, concerns linger regarding the rumored execution of the reboot, which is just a few characters who you don't know about who will be in the movie with the original X-Men. So you get your first class guys, you know, Cyclops, Angel, Iceman, Beast, and Jean Grey. And then you get another few characters, like Storm might be in there, Rogue, Shadowcat, Psylocke, Marrow. I keep saying Marrow. I'm trying to think about the characters. There's so many X-Men. We've got Wolfsbane in there if you want. Magic and Colossus. Yeah, so again, he mentioned Thor Love and Thunder 4 times in this article, and I'm positive it has to do with SEO. This is all SEO written. Impending X-Men reboot. He doesn't make a connective point in this whole article. The impending X-Men reboot teeters on the precipice of total franchise failure, with Marvel's intentions to bring humor into femme-centric focus a cause for concern. No one mentioned humor. They mentioned that they were female leads. Maybe that it would be focused alongside the original core X-Men. This means nothing. Oh, Jubilee. Betsy Braddock. I almost forgot about her. Yeah. Danny Moonstar. That'd be great too. Armor. Okay. Dust. Oh, Dust. Forgot about Dust. Yeah, they could do Dust. That'd be pretty cool. And this clown has a comic. Yeah, and among other things. So again, so a couple bad takes. So, to recap, bad take number 1, the X-Men apparently flopped on Disney Plus, which is not true. Bad take number 2, apparently, Morph being gay is bad. Again, your mileage will vary on that one. And bad take number 3, women in X-Men means X-Men movies, MCU fails entirely. Until the next Avengers and or Spider-Man movie comes out. Now, Firestar. I forgot about Firestar. That's another good one. It's like they're using TubeBuddy to write this article in order to grab as many SEO-friendly buzzwords as possible. Yeah. It feels almost like it really does feel like ChatGPT also to an extent, because a lot of these right-wing grifters use AI to write their articles already. I mean, websites that I've written for have used AI to produce their work already, which one of many reasons I'm on YouTube and not, certain websites that I'll not name here. Yeah, X-Men is some of the best female characters in comics history. In terms of the lineup, it's always been a great team for female protagonists. And again, one thing I wish they could do, and this is my wish for the movies down the road, maybe not next film, but eventually, I really want to see Kitty Pryde and Wolverine's relationship. I want to see her train under Wolverine. I want to see her become stronger under Wolverine. I think that whole arc where she and Wolverine train together and like they work with Katana and everything, I think it's a great story, and I really want them to adapt that because I think it's incredible. Wolverine works best, and I think the movies with Fox realize this too. Wolverine works best when he is mentoring someone younger than him. I think that connection is really good. The movies started out with Rogue, but then never panned out. I think it definitely worked with Logan and X-23. I think that's incredible. I really hope that X-23 comes into the main Marvel universe too with Deadpool and Wolverine. I hear rumors that Daphne Keane is in the movie. Daphne Keane, right? That's her name, the actress's name. And he's open. Didn't Ultimate Kitty become leader of the mutant kind in the old Ultimate Comics? I believe so, yeah. Anyway. So, we've heard enough bad takes from here. Let's look at some bad takes elsewhere, shall we? Now, I have a few videos here, one of which I was told I have to do. And that will be, I'll show you right now. One I'm building up towards. Oh, no, stop. I hate when this gets grouped up. Ungroup. All right, here we go. Good. One I plan on doing is this one right here. I hear this video by Literature Devil is supposed to be a trip, but I also have this right here, and I can just use a random video from here. I just typed in, what I did was I went onto YouTube and just typed X-Men Political, and I want to see what came up. I can do one of these random videos from here. I do not intend on covering, before you ask, I have no intention of, oh, there's my stream right here. I have no intention of covering, oh, I'm popping up again. Eric July's video, so don't bother asking. I just don't want to deal with him as much as possible because he annoys the crap out of me. Anyone else, thumb down for that. And but I might do Literature Devil. So, chat, what do you think? Do a random video I have no idea about, or the Literature Devil video that was recommended to me a couple times? People saying it's a take on X-Men. We'll do it the same way we do the Lily Orchard videos, where we just kind of go in, go out, take a look around. I have no idea who Literature Devil is, by the way. I've never seen his content or her content or their content. I have no idea anything about them. I just know I was told it was a messy. What has the Drinker made a vid yet? Well, let's take a look at that. There we go. Has the Critical Drinker made a video? Let's take a look. Dark Phoenix, he's done. No, Critical Drinker has avoided discussing X-Men in its entirety. Death of the Girl Boss with Echo on the front. Echo was pretty good. Echo actually was one of the most widely watched Disney Plus shows on the platform. Do Eric July, don't wimp out. He annoys me though. He really annoys me. I have to really be in the right mindset to deal with that guy. The Devil, I think. Literature Devil, I don't know who it is, but it sounds worth roasting. Dearth of Good Villainesses, yeah, that's good. Because knows it was good. Yeah, because knows it's good, exactly. RIP, recommendations and YouTube algorithm. Yeah, I'm. Listen, after this is done, I'm gonna just blitz Jane Nicholson's 4-hour video again, just to get like something good on my feed after this, just to bleach it. That's what I have to do every time. I've gotten so much Lily Orchard stuff, by the way, over the last like month. It's not even funny. Apparently, Critical Drinker reviewed Iron Claw. All right, I'm seeing some people say July and the Devil. Let's do July first, and then we do the Devil. So here's Eric July's video. Let's give this a shot. All right, and then we'll do Literature Devil. All right, sound good. And this is, I'm going to put subtitles on for the hearing impaired, though I have a feeling that his Yep, auto-generated, of course. All right. Yep, that's good. So, for those unaware, Eric July is a right-wing grifter. He has connections to the Blaze, which is Glenn Beck's station. He is very sensitive if anyone ever makes fun of his arms. He's very sensitive if people point out his physical appearance. As I've noticed, every single right-wing grifter who hates him does. And he does comics, which I think are passable. He's gotten angry at me in the past because I did not review his comics for websites. I told him to send us a review copy. He declined. So, we're not reviewing the comics. However, I have read the comic because it leaked on 4chan, and that's why I read it. It's very whatever. His comic it's a comic where you get full... It's only it's very few panels. It's usually like 2 or 3 big drawings, and then the action's unclear, but it's also not so bad it's like sticks out. It's a very whatever comic. If I didn't know the person who made it, I wouldn't really give too much of a thought to it. What's up with his arms? I don't know. He just gets very sensitive about his arms. For whatever reason, when anyone mentions his arms, he gets really upset. But they look just fine. They don't look like there's nothing weird about them. It's just arms. But he's very sensitive about it. Apparently, if you tell him his arms look funky, he gets angry. Not that I've done that, but I've seen people do that. Anyway, so let's see what Eric July, and of course I was slightly hyping up doing it. I was very annoyed with this, but I was hoping you'd tell me to do it anyway. Let's take a look at Eric July's video. Yeah, Isom is his comic. It's very weird. Anyway, to the video.
It is not a secret that the advocates of social justice when it comes to comics are very dishonest people. They are leeches that exist to only hijack subcultures and fandom, and honestly, they do a great job of this. But when it comes to the old
we do a great job of it, apparently. So here's the thing I find funny already. Already he knows his audience. This is how the grift works. This is how the grift functions. The grift needs to be... So here's the problem with the grift in general. Let me just copy this for reasons I may have a use for this video at some point. Anyway, so here's the deal with the grift. The grift requires you to be angry at all times. If you're not angry, you are not buying into it. And again, what July is doing is very clever. He's trying to make his audience angry. He's ramping them up. It's like a foreplay of sorts to build to the point. He's getting them so angry and so worked up. Oh, these leeches, they're sucking our hobby dry. Because what happens is when you're angry, you don't think clearly. And we're gonna think clearly today. Maybe he has a good, but maybe I'm being too hasty. Maybe Eric July has a great point, and his argument is fantastic. And I haven't heard this argument before in the comments of multiple videos and tweets responding to my Magneto video at all, so I definitely do not have any idea what's about to come.
social justice has always been a part of comics thing, the go-to cliche that they use is referencing the X-Men as an example of this. There are usually 2 claims that are often misunderstood, very misunderstood, surrounding this idea. 1, they say that the X-Men was flat out created to be social justice, and 2, the Magneto and Professor X, that whole conflict, they were created to represent MLK and Malcolm X. Both of these are either partially false or entirely false depending on the narrative. Notice.
So this is actually a good point. So Eric July is arguing that the X-Men were created to be an allegory for racial discrimination, or a direct allegory for Malcolm X and MLK. Now, I addressed this in 2 videos already. Let's talk about the Malcolm X one, because that's the easiest one to discuss. No, Magneto and Professor X were not made to be Malcolm X and Magneto parallels. There are similarities, but they were not created that way, and that was adopted more by later writers who used the imagery to kind of influence their storytelling. But keep in mind at the time when X-Men was created, this was 1962, 1960. Oh, we have super chat. Super chat. The Yodeler, thank you for the chat. Finally, YouTube gave me a recommendation for a small channel that is actually good. Cheers. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Again, we are growing, and I'm very glad with every video I put out that people are not only coming around, but sticking around for each new production we do. Each thing that we do for the channel grows the channel. This light right here that's burning in my eyes was designed to make the experience better. So, we're growing, and I'm very happy to have everyone aboard for this because it's a lot of fun. It's not fun watching Eric July and his arms that are hidden from view though. He is hiding those arms. That speaks to his instinct. Again, I don't know what's up with his arms. They're fine arms. Who gives a crap about his arms? But apparently he gives a lot. Anyway, but thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
These claims are hardly ever backed up with anything other than like some headline of an article. First and foremost, no, Stan Lee did not create Magneto and Professor X with the sole intent of having them be analogies for MLK and Malcolm X. They weren't.
Look, here's the thing. Magneto in the comics, when Stan Lee was writing Magneto, was a very different beast from Magneto today. No one who talks about X-Men legitimately is going to reference the Stan Lee Jack Kirby article as like original, as the authentic top tier version of these characters. They would become better. The Chris Claremont run is where people really say the X-Men came into their own, artistically and stylistically, that is. But no, here's a sick beat. That's fair. I'll give that. And Dragon Ball Super Dope, who is a friend of the channel and has been on stream with me before. He's a cool dude, and yeah, I didn't tell people I was making YouTube videos until I started just doing them. Anyway, so he has a good beard. I'll give him that. Anyway, so yeah, I'm not going to argue with Eric July in this one. He is right. Stan Lee and Jack Kirby did not intentionally make Magneto or Professor X allegories for MLK and Malcolm X. Oh, sorry, what did I say? MLK? So Professor X and Magneto as parallels of MLK and Malcolm X. There we go. Cool. Excellent words. I'm also not saying that, and again, and to cut your point off before you say it, Eric, because I'm going to say it, yes, Stan Lee made the X-Men initially because he wanted to have an easy source for how to create superpowers. And he was like, oh, we'll call them the mutants because mutants have powers. But no one knows what a mutant is, so therefore X-Men, because it's a cooler name, because Professor X, X-Man, And again, that was the intention. However, very early on in the Stan Lee run, we see, especially with the Sentinels showing up, tensions form between mutants and humans. This was not as big a deal until we got to the Chris Claremont run. Let's see if Eric July... So I want to place some bets right now. Will Eric July mention Chris Claremont at all in this video? Sound off now. Yes or no? Let's keep playing.
Weren't even specifically created to represent the civil rights era. If you read the X-Men when it first came out, it's not even remotely analogous to the civil rights era. So it makes sense as to why Stan Lee said in an interview that the metaphor was given to him more so as a gift. It like fell in his lap. He didn't specifically create it, and he didn't create the comic to represent the civil rights era. It was more of a case that there happened to be a metaphor at the time that could really make the narrative more relatable. He even admits that any sort of portrayal in terms of Magneto being Malcolm and Professor X being like MLK was something that was done unconsciously. He literally says that himself. He didn't try to do it. This makes sense again because Magneto in his first appearances was just a regular cutthroat sort of villain. Professor X and the X-Men sort of stood in his way. He was a supremacist in a sense. He had intentions on ruling the world and
Again, I mentioned this all in my Magneto video too. I don't disagree with what he's saying right here. He is right in that Magneto was not intended to be this great character. He became a great character. And this thing about storytelling, a lot of people don't realize. Intentionality at the start of a story is not always essential to telling a good story. Sometimes what happens is you just create this foundation, right? Over time, you build upon that foundation. You go from point A to point B to point C to point D, and over time, you build into something fantastic. Green Goblin was not a great villain when he first showed up in the comics. He was a clown type character. He became great with each subsequent appearance. The Joker was meant to be a one-off bad guy. He was gonna die at the end of his issue. But with each appearance, he became more and more and more interesting. Some of the comments mentioned Deadpool at this point. Yeah, Deadpool is the best example of this. Rob Liefeld, despite creating Deadpool, created none of the elements people like about Deadpool. Deadpool's humor, Deadpool's style, it was all after Liefeld. Because Liefeld made him as a cool character. Other writers took Deadpool and made him into the Merc with a mouth. Made him into this great... Well, Liefeld's an artist, not a writer. But he did some writing. But you get what I'm trying to say. He is the creator, but the creation gained a life of its own. So what Stan Lee originally intended with the X-Men is kind of irrelevant. Because, let's also be frank, Stan Lee didn't care about the X-Men as much as later writers did. Stan Lee was more into Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, the Avengers. That was his focus. The X-Men was not really a big focus of Stan Lee's. But again, I digress. Oh, Darth Maul. Yeah, great example. Darth Maul's terrible in Phantom Menace, but great in Clone Wars. They made him a good character after the Phantom Menace ended. But he had a cool fight, so that's that.
The lesser humans, not any sort of common goal with Professor X. Don't take my word for anything. Just go read the comics starting in 1963 up until really the damn 80s. To say that they were...
No, until Giant Size X-Men #1, when Chris Claremont started writing the book.
Specifically created to be metaphors for the civil rights era is not only lazy, it's flat out and verifiably false. It wasn't until the 80s when Magneto became more of a villain that people sort of tried to sympathize with, and he had that past intertwined with Professor X. That was actually a bit of a retcon. So if the SJWs read comics, which they don't, they'd understand this. Chris Claremont's era of X-Men...
Okay, well, everyone who guessed if Chris Claremont would be referenced in this video, you all lost. Let's take a look at what he has to say about Chris Claremont. Now, I find it very funny that he's saying the SJWs don't read comics. Meanwhile, we all predicted his entire argument 5 minutes before it started. In my video a month ago, had the same core argument. Because he has to make the rage, right? He has to make you angry. He has to make you have an enemy. Those SJWs, they don't read comics. They don't know this argument. Like I do, even though we're all saying the same thing. So, I don't know what you're talking about, buddy. He mentioned him. Okay, Eric July will give you your flowers in that sense. Let's keep going.
Man, is way more analogous to that.
Also, this video was made in 4 years ago. So, yeah, 4 years ago. So, you know, I'll forgive the SJW talk here.
Era, but even that isn't specifically referenced to the civil rights era. Again, that's something that he clearly admits in interviews. He said that the metaphors he thought about were along the lines of Begin and the Israeli dichotomy, not the civil rights dichotomy. Again, something else he admitted in interviews. So factually speaking, not opinion, the X-Men were not created to represent the civil rights era by way of Stan Lee, and even the retcon of X and Magneto during Claremont's run, they weren't created as such. Now that this is out the way, it is no secret.
So let me ask a question here. Does it matter if the X-Men is directly written as a direct connection to the civil rights movement? I'd argue no, because they're not meant to be a one-to-one. Different writers have different perspectives as to what they want to make the X-Men an analogy for, but it's always about an oppressed group of people. That's the core of it. Because even when Stan Lee was writing it with it being just a general superhero story, the idea that the X-Men existed as a minority of people who were just being oppressed by society, that's the core element. That's the core piece of it. I guess what I'm saying is it's not really relevant if they're a direct connection. So I don't get what this point is. I think what July wants is the one-to-one. He wants that connective tissue. Like, he wants them to actually say in the text, wow, Magneto, you are just like Malcolm X. Wow, Professor X, you are just like MLK. But they don't, it's not that kind of story. It's the kind of story where you apply information. There's a very famous quote from Tolkien about applicability. And while it does not apply to X-Men exactly, applicability is a key element as to why the X-Men have survived for so long. But again, A direct analogy for civil rights would be kind of weird, given the fact that mutants inherently possess potentially dangerous, threatening powers. Yeah, that was an oversight. That was an oversight with my most recent video. I kind of neglected that whole element because I didn't think it was necessary to the point. But yeah, the mutants do have powers that can destroy an entire planet if they sneeze the wrong way. That's pretty important. It's a pretty big factor.
That the X-Men have had stories created around them that can absolutely be interpreted in multiple ways. That's what good writers are able to do. It's also not a secret that mutants have been disenfranchised at times. X-Men have been the enemy of not only the standard villains, but governments and the citizens among them, though not always. This conflict has made for some very classic storylines and became the identity of the X-Men. The problem is that the social justice advocates conflate this with social justice. This is why I think that they are projecting when they say things like, everyone you dislike is a social justice warrior according to you. No. I think that everything that you do like is something that you like to claim is related to social justice. Anybody with half a brain, however, understands that heroes being disenfranchised, or aliens or types of people being enfranchised and made to be the enemies of others because they are different is not exclusive to social justice. In fact,
what the fuck are you talking about? Like, what are you talking about, man? What's your point? Yeah, the mutants are a group of people who can be applied to many different causes. What do you mean? How is that different from social justice in your definition of the term? Because I always thought social justice was the idea that societal issues that require justice in response to it. People who are being disenfranchised. By your own definition, as far as I understand the concept of social justice, it fits the definition. So I don't get what you're trying to say. How do you define social justice? What does that mean? You have to define this term for us to see how it's different from what the X-Men were doing already, where they took concepts, created storylines that could be applied to those concepts as an allegory, as a discussion, and saw how that worked. And again, it just doesn't make any sense if there's no, like, it's like solving an equation where you are missing a few numbers from the equation. It's like doing algebra and it's like, you have to solve for X, but Y is also a number that's missing. It's like, you really can't figure out what you're talking about. Because it's like, how do you define that? You're missing a key component of your argument, July.
I'd argue that just about every single mainstream comic book character has had some sort of conflict where they have people or types of people that are disliking them because of what they are. This isn't even exclusive to the X-Men or mutants. This is also a self-defeating point because Malcolm X was not an advocate of what you guys consider to be social justice. Ironically enough, he's one of the most misunderstood civil rights figures, as people just think that he was simply a more militant MLK. He wasn't as peaceful. He was willing to fight back. This is objectively false. I have a video going through some of Malcolm's ideals, and I'll link that in the description. But brother Malcolm X and the MLK were ideologically, fundamentally opposed. They weren't friends. They weren't even former friends like X and Magneto were after the retcons. And the social justice advocates that advocate diversity and inclusion.
I think he kind of ran away from his point there for a bit. Okay, so Malcolm X, very interesting figure. If you haven't listened to his speeches, do listen to them. There's a lot going on there. I am not qualified to tell you what Malcolm X did and did not say, because I'm not a scholar on Malcolm X. I'm also very white. So I'm not going to tell you what Malcolm X said. I'd rather you read it for yourself. But there is the famous, the ballot or the bullet speech, which I think is worth reading on its own. Read that or watch that preferably in its entirety, and come back to see if Eric July's point makes sense, if it holds up. And again, there is a line, a very major statement that Martin Luther King said, that a riot is the language of the unheard. It's one of my favorite quotes from his, because when you are not listened to by society, you fight. And again, I am not going to speak for these figures because I am, again, white. I encourage you to listen to it for yourself, though. Anyway, and again, Malcolm X's viewpoints changed drastically after coming back from Mecca, which is a whole other discussion. And he he was open to discussing, to collaborating with MLK. There were multiple interviews where he said outright he would be open to a kind of cross pollination of their parties if it meant working towards some common good. But anyway, and again, none of this actually connects to what social justice actually is either. That's the thing I'm confused by. I don't get what your point is. What is social justice to you? It's some nebulous thing. They just say this is this and this is not this. What does that mean? How do you define these terms? Anyway.
He wasn't for diversity and inclusion. He damn sure wasn't an integrationist like MLK was. The only similarity they shared is that they both recognized that black people were getting the crap end of the stick. Malcolm X, however, wasn't trying to do sit-ins or force himself into white businesses or championing the Civil Rights Act or anything like that. Nor was he trying to force white people to accept him. He, in fact, wanted blacks to be self-sufficient, and he knew that the Civil Rights Act was sort of a joke and the politicians were just using black people to sort of advance their power. But he wasn't a supremacist either, like folks on the other side tried to paint him as, especially post-Mecca. This wasn't a case of two people with the same end game and different...
Okay, hang on a second. The thing with Mecca was when he went to Mecca, he saw people of different populations, different backgrounds coming together in worship. From my understanding, that definitely changed his perspective quite a bit because he saw that integration was possible in some circumstances, though obviously, again, I'm not a scholar on this, nor am I going to say what Malcolm X said or didn't say. I encourage you to read his own words for yourself, especially post-Mecca. But I also think that this is a really weird... Oh, we have another one. Thank you, Damian Patterson, for the super chat. All right. Chris Claremont, in the introduction to the Marvel graphic novel X-Men God Loves, Man Kills, specifically states that one of the inspirations for the story was Martin Luther King Jr. Yeah, that's another thing too. He explicitly states it. So right there, that's one big thing. I think I have it somewhere back there, actually. Let me see if I can... I'll get it later. But I have it back there. I was considering grabbing it and bringing it over here and reading the X-Ray Lab. I'm not sure if it's the same edition that you guys have. Probably is actually what I'm talking about. Do you actually think a human for the Marvel Universe would be able to properly distinguish between Inhuman and Mutant or Spider-Man to the Toad? No, they wouldn't. Exactly, they wouldn't. That's a good point. All right. No, but thank you for the super chat. That's a great point. So Chris Claremont explicitly compared them in his work. So Eric July is just wrong, and you can tell he was wrong also before that because he refused to show a quotation from Chris Claremont. Remember that? He paraphrased Chris Claremont, but showed direct quotes from Stan Lee because he could find quotes from Stan Lee, who famously flip-flopped his opinion half the time when he was giving speeches to say whatever was popular at that moment, to prove his point. Anyway, so he's saying things about Malcolm X that don't really make sense in terms of what he actually spoke. He's telling you, we have a... thank you. Third super chat of the day. Wow. Gerlo, thank you. What does this say? Gerlo, thank you for the super chat. I'm not sure what... You just left the super chat. That's really sweet of you. I don't see a message, though, but thank you so much for the super chat. For the super, I should say. Anyway, this is really cool. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate this. Let's go back to Eric July and suffer some more.
Tactics. This was two individuals on completely opposite ends in terms of endgame. So all in all, this is nothing but revisionist history by way of the social justice advocates who simply want to excuse the comic book hijack and bad writing. X-Men doesn't even prove your point, as they aren't on the nose like many writers are now. They had stories that were up for different interpretations in terms of social reference and relevance. This is unlike Captain Marvel writers telling you straight up in the dialogue that they aren't losing reporters to 7-foot misogynists. That's actually in the dialogue. This is why you...
No, but if you read God Loves, Man Kills, you'd see it. They're a little more overt than you're implying they are. God Loves, Man Kills has some very overt references. It's one of the ones I reference all the time for that reason. It's, for one... They directly compare mutations to racial injustice. comparing slurs directed towards mutants to slurs directed at black people. The villain is a televangelist, a direct reference to televangelists who in the 80s and such were spreading hateful rhetoric towards the queer community, towards black communities. And the book opens with a very brutal, disturbing hate crime, which is impossible to look at and not draw comparisons to real life hate crimes. So while Captain Marvel's "we're not losing reporters to misogynists" line, if that is actually a line from a single comic and a single issue, it is not even close to how on the nose Chris Claremont's writing was at the time. No matter what you say, because they did the same thing then. You just didn't notice it, or you're ignoring it. Probably deliberately to prove your point, because I notice that you're avoiding showing any evidence for anything you're saying, Eric, at least, especially specific evidence, other than the general statement that, hey, SJWs are wrong. Stan Lee said this specific thing at one point in time, but he still said it was a metaphor over time, where like the message came to him, but it wasn't intentional from the start, which doesn't really say anything at all, because his run in X-Men isn't exactly what set the world on fire, so to speak. Oh yeah, or Days of Future Past, as thank you, Head Ninja pointed out. Days of Future Past, it's death camps. You couldn't get more Holocaust imagery if you tried. It's pretty overt. Another super chat. Classic Luigi fan has referenced my favorite X-Men line of any of the movies. Have you tried not being a mutant? A subtle not on the nose quote from the 2003 film X2. Yes. Now, X2 is very overt. And again, I hesitate to credit him for this, because he is a really cruddy person, but Bryan Singer did bring a lot of queer subtext to X-Men as a film franchise, thanks to his own life experience. And as much as Bryan Singer is a terrible person for a number of reasons I don't feel like getting into right now, but you can easily look up, he brought a lot of subtext, very overt subtext. And for the biggest bunch of the audience that knows about X-Men, that was their first big introduction to X-Men beyond like vague understanding. And X2 is one of the best X-Men films, I think second only to Logan. So yeah, great quote, great example. Thank you so much for bringing it up. That is a big one. Let's finish Eric July. There's only like 3 minutes left. How much more can you say?
Trying to excuse your nonsense by referencing the X-Men as a self-detonating point, because those comics aren't written like the nonsense that we see today. So you're wrong on multiple fronts. Those X-Men comics could be metaphors for a multitude of different things. Being disenfranchised is not exclusive to social justice. Neither is fighting against bigotry or having people dislike you because of who you are. It's not a difficult thing to do. You can relate to disenfranchised people or people being treated unfairly while also recognizing that social justice is stupid. And I'm not even saying that Stan Lee hated social justice or was an anti-social justice advocate. I'm not even saying that the X-Men was anti-social justice. I'm not even saying that you couldn't find similarities between movements or minority groups and X-Men in terms of their experience. Absolutely, you can find those similarities with conflicts such as...
Okay, so there he goes right there. He's saying, I'm not saying it doesn't have this, because he knows that we're going to pull out comics where they show you overt stuff. He knows what the response is going to be. He's playing the game. Because for people like Eric July, and here's why I was also hesitant to watch Eric July, he knows what he's saying. He knows that by not showing you a specific comic, he can just tell you what it says and you believe him. Because he's already got you in with the grift. He's already got you angry. You're upset. There are these SJWs. How dare they say this? And then he says, oh, well, the X-Men comics do this. And like, oh, yeah, you're right, they say this. And you never actually read what the X-Men comics are saying. You're given a false narrative of what they actually are, right? And because of that, he can tell you anything. He can tell you the X-Men, he can tell you Wolverine eats cheese every issue of the comics. And you're so angry, yeah, Wolverine loves that mozzarella. No, actually, it's American cheese. Oh, he loves that Canadian man loves that American cheese. Doesn't matter what it is. He can just tell you anything, and you'll believe it, because you're not reading the comics. You're not reading anything. He's not giving you an example. He's not giving you specifics, except for a couple quotes from Stan Lee, who everyone in his audience knows. They know Stan Lee. They don't know who Chris Claremont is because they don't read comics. but they know who Stan Lee is. Or if they do read Chris comics, then they read Chris Claremont, and maybe they didn't pick up on the messages, whatever. Or didn't read the introductions to the books that they own, supposedly, like we saw in the comments just now. And then he says, it's not about social justice, but it's also not about social justice. So what's it about then, dude? If it's not about social justice, but it's also not about social justice, then what is it? A neutral statement. So who cares, you know? What does it matter in that case, right? And again, they haven't defined what social justice even is. So if it's not this, but it's also not this, then what is it if we haven't defined what this is in the first place? What are you going to do?
Racism. I'm saying that to refer to that and say that it was created to be representative of the civil rights era is simply not true. And to try to pin the fact that...
Okay, that's his whole argument. That sentence right there tells me his entire argument in a nutshell, that he is only talking about, very specifically, it was not created to be a reference to the civil rights movement. Okay, that's not a particularly complex thought. Anyone with 5 seconds of media literacy, knowing the old comics, can tell you that. Anyone who's read that can tell you that. But because he's dressed it up in all this flamboyancy and all this rhetoric, you don't notice that he hasn't actually said all that much that's all that meaningful to any audience. It's just a grift. And he's hiding behind all this flowery language that doesn't say anything because his ultimate argument is quite simple. And it's something you really won't be able to argue. It's a very simple argument. It was not made with this in mind. Okay. The rest doesn't matter, though. That's the only thing that matters in this whole video so far. That one sentence.
Mutants are minorities is proof that it's social justice. It's both intellectually lazy and dishonest. You, as a cornball social justice advocate, do not get to claim monopoly on having to deal with or being against things such as folks that are being disenfranchised or not being liked because of who they are. This is something that many individuals of different political and socio-political backgrounds can recognize or experience or relate to, including folks like myself, which sees social justice as the gimmick that it is in concept because there is...
This means nothing, dude. What are you saying? Just get to a point. A point would be beneficial at this point. You're just saying words. They don't mean anything. The social justice is it's a cornball thing. Okay, what are you saying then? What is the point coming, dude? Like, it's just rambling. Get to a fucking point.
No such thing as social justice. There's only justice. These SJWs just want credit for something and excuses for continuing to ruin characters in books that they don't even read. Y'all aren't even inclusive. All that kumbaya, love everybody has an asterisk next to it that says we only love you if you agree with us. As soon as folks like my black ass says something that is against the narrative, trust me, y'all are quick to sling out those racist connotations because, well, I don't behave like SJWs think black people should behave.
And again,
you motherfuckers ain't special and you're raging hypocrites. And while that...
The anger here is theatrics. And he knows it's theatrics. He knows it's nonsense. Because you gotta look at it this way. The moment he lets up his anger about this non-existent topic that no one is arguing about, you can think critically about it. That's why I keep pausing. I want you to think critically about what he's saying. Because the moment you exercise a single ounce of critical thought, you realize he's not saying anything at all. He's just saying a lot of words that amount to those SJWs, they're taking out comics, they're ruining things, they're stealing the comics. The comics weren't stolen to begin with, they were ours, and we got them taken away, and those SJWs are so bad. And he's not actually saying anything of any merit about the comics. He's not even really talking about the comics. Name a single issue he has mentioned in this comic. I've mentioned God Loves Man Kills, top of the head, and from chat, of course. We mentioned X2. Mentioned the X-Men 14, where the Sentinels first show up. What have you referenced, Eric?
That may be a little bit of my opinion. What isn't my opinion is that some of you are just flat out lying about the history of the X-Men.
Before this video ends, I want to also add that
I think that it's very important that you oppose the SJWs who try to go out of their way to make it seem as if being an advocate of social justice is exclusive to being against racism or bigotry and things like that. It is that line of thinking that allows them to try to say that somebody's racist or somebody is sexist simply because they disagree with social justice, or worse, because they simply disagree with an SJW.
All right. You know, it's funny. I just have this weird feeling I'm missing something here. What am I forgetting? There's something I'm not looking at here. It's so weird. I couldn't help but think of something I'm forgetting to mention. What do you got here? Oh, what do you know? Interesting. Libertarian rapper and metal singer. I had no idea what it is. Eric July has the attention of Fox News back in 2015. How interesting. Oh wow, it's so strange here. 21st. Wow, it's interesting. Whole big puff piece about Eric July working with Fox News. What a weird thing. How strange. How peculiar. It's almost like his grift has a monetary reason, and he's been working in this industry as a media person for conservative broadcasters since, at the very least, 2015. But that would be ridiculous. Apparently he's a metal singer and rapper. I've never heard of any of his stuff. But, yeah, apparently so. Now, I think we can move away from Eric July, and he's also a professional tap dancer. Oh, man of many talents. What are you going to do? Anyway, so strange how so many grifters have connections to Fox News and Glenn Beck. And Daily Wire, I'm sure, too. I'm sure if you look into that, there's nothing specific. I'm sure there's no money being passed around in public that they hope you just don't notice. And not in private. I'm talking like just publicly announced deals. Anyway, this video right here has gotten a lot of... I've been told to look at this truth about the woke X-Men. I wonder how much of it's just going to be Eric July's video from 4 years ago, recycled. Now in a 4 month... Not a video that came out 1 month ago. So Eric July's video came out 4 years. And my stream audio is much quieter. Interesting. Not sure why that is. Yeah, I can always try to amp it up slightly. Let me try that. Let me try it a little bit. That good? That good? Cool. Anyway. Yeah, so this video by Literature Devil came out 1 month ago. I want to have a homework assignment, even though it's an hour longer. Let's compare it to Eric July's 10-minute video, which was a very overt grift. Let's see if it's better or worse than that video, and how many of the same talking points are recycled. Let's find out what they said.
This video is brought to you by the Complete Waifu Handbook and its wonderful Discord. But more about that later.
Oh, Pathfinder. Okay, Pathfinder book. I'm down for Pathfinder books, even if it is interesting.
I'm going to open this one up by quoting a fellow devil. Vanity is definitely my favorite sin. Kevin, it's so basic. Self-love. The all-natural opiate.
What does that have to do with anything? Okay.
Comics have always been political, has become the post-2016 rallying cry for current year Marvel defenders. An effort to push back against the horde of Marvel's angry legacy fanbase now taking issue with the company's new direction.
So again, this is a strange thing here. Let's look at this here. Comics have always been political. Let's ignore the fact that when the first Marvel comics ever published was, you know, Captain America fighting Hitler, punching Hitler in the face, a man we hadn't started going to war with at that time. We have here a 6-year article about Captain America being a member of Hydra. So right there, he's saying it's politically leaning. Well, the political there is that they have Captain America as a fascist. That would be pretty losing its audience there. Marvel executive says emphasis on diversity may have alienated readers. Comic Studios Vice President of Sales tells Summit that some Some stories may have had enough of new female and ethnic minority characters. I would like to know what that quote is and the full context. Marvel is losing ground to DC. That is, what was that, 2006? 2016. I'm sorry. So, and the other one is how Marvel lost its way, and it looks like it's talking about Marvel Studios, more specifically some of the issues with the recent run of stuff, which has nothing to do with politics, but has to do with the products being rushed and not always fully fleshed out. So, talking about modern Marvel, you have articles that were about 8 years ago, one from 6 years ago. Oh, sorry, actually one from 8 years ago too, 7-8 years, and one about Marvel Studios. So none of this has to do with diversity beyond one article that talks about one executive saying some of their readers stopped or upset by the release of characters like Riri Williams, which was at the time the peak of Comicsgate when they first started having the whole backlash to all of that. So your articles don't actually compete with what you're talking about.
The word angry, of course, has been dirtied by the internet so much that its meaning is currently closer to unreasonable rage, an effort to paint all critics as unreasonable and therefore dismissible. This way, the Marvel writers seem both victim and hero, by writing their stories with the stunning and brave commentary despite the outrage. But what caused the anger in the first place? As you could probably guess, the major source of the—
I love how he's acting like Red Skull being a figure of political nature is somehow new. The Red Skull, okay. Yeah, Red Skull being Jordan Peterson is pretty funny, considering how many figures try to grift online after their careers fizzle, but I digress. Anyway, trying to belittle their critics as raging and all that, that's one thing. You know what? It depends on the writer, right? Sometimes the writer or artist will dismiss their critics in a way that is upsetting and is dismissive. Other times, not so much. It all depends on the execution. So, talking in vague terms without specifics, then... And again, you're using websites as your main source of data there, not the words of the artists and writers, which would be beneficial if you talk about their actions, but I digress.
The conflict is the surge of politically driven stories modern comics have blatantly produced.
These are written over the course of 10 years from each other, and the most recent one is about 7 years old.
And stop making comics political has become the rallying cry for the disgruntled fans, which of course led to the phrase, comics have always been political. The supposed reason why so much of Marvel's legacy fanbase has either walked away, or have erupted into full revolt, is because it's no longer their politics or their self-image being reflected in these books, and that they feel threatened by the lack of reflection. To quote Kelly Sue DeConnick, when some of the more reactionary comic book fans, as my academic friends like to call them, a normative comic book reader, which is, by the way, such a myth. My point being—
Oh, I hate the way you have the font there, dude. Like, there's too many contrasting colors. I can barely read what you're saying. You gotta give some, I hate how that's done. That's terrible. Ugh. And it's moving? Ugh. Terrible.
That some of the men with short memories who are so threatened by myself and my female colleagues, and some of the books that we make that bring different perspectives, who feel that we are taking something away from them. The quote is a bit messy because in this interview, DeConnick is obviously angry and makes more complaints than points, but—
The quote is messy. It's an out-of-context quote that you're not showing the full context of. You even have the ... at the end. Just show her saying it. It sounds like she just took an off-the-cuff kind of thing, that she was just kind of word salading until she got to the point she was trying to say. It's more than anything else. Also, why you always show an image in the middle of statements as opposed to the video itself? I mean, I can do this with my hands too. Doesn't mean I'm angry. Doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter. The point is, and someone take a still shot of that probably. The point is this. If you can't show the video in context with the stupid face in the position, then is it worth... I don't know, it's just dumb. I hate when you do this.
We're still shown some critical things, like Kelly Sue DeConnick's different perspective being a political one.
And if you don't like my politics, don't buy my book.
There we go.
problem solved.
To again quote Kelly Sue DeConnick, "I'm sorry to break this to you, but Captain America is a social justice warrior. And the truth is, there actually is a legacy of American comics reflecting politics, even Marvel and DC. Magneto's infamous tragic backstory as a Holocaust survivor immediately comes to mind. Even Frank Miller, who, if you..."
Wait a second, hang on. Let's stick with the Captain America one first, buddy. Why are you trying to move away from Captain America? Just bring it up and then you change topics immediately? Okay.
"You're a member of the performatively offended group of Americans is the guy who wrote Holy Terror. But if you're everyone else..."
Wait, what? Hang on a second here. Hang on a second here, buddy. Hang on a second here. Oh, God. Okay. Captain America, Magneto, Holy Terror. What the fuck does Holy Terror have to do with Captain America being a social justice warrior? And also, why Holy Terror? Why is that the first one that comes to mind? Why not The Dark Knight Returns, which is so overtly political and so making fun of American politics that the president's a character who they make fun of directly? Why are you bringing up Holy Terror of all comics? There's a scene in The Dark Knight Strikes Again which is literally a reference to 9/11. Like Frank Miller has said, I made this scene because 9/11 happened and it disturbed me so much I had to reference it in my art somewhere. And that's valid. That's a fair reason. I get that. That's cool. I respect that. I think the book is terrible, but I respect the motivations behind that. And also, you're saying that because of Magneto. Magneto, again, as we've established before, and even Eric July correctly pointed out, Magneto's story as a Holocaust survivor is something that came later. But it still came, is what I'm saying. You know, maybe it wasn't at the beginning of the character's history, but it still became an integral part of the character. Much like how Logan's bone claws came in later, you know? When Wolverine was first introduced into the comics, his claws were retractable, yes, but there was no evidence to believe he had natural claws in his body. The knives just came out of his fists, and it was believed there was like some contraption built in, that he was a healer, yes, but that Weapon X put a contraption that withdrew claws out of his knuckles, and indeed, Logan even alluded to this at times. And then later on, when Magneto ripped his adamantium out, it was revealed, oh, he has bone claws, actually. And that's become a part of the character ever since. An integral part, as we saw in Logan's origin story. So the fact it comes later doesn't matter. It's still a part of the character. Who cares if they were created with every component of their character conceived of? Doesn't matter. What matters is what it was made later on and how well these changes were integrated into the character's lore and history moving forward. It doesn't have to be all from the start. I mean, look at Batman. His entire aesthetic was developed over the course of decades. And Holy Terror, quite frankly, is a bad comic. Not even just from the political standpoint, which itself is awful. It's just a boring, poorly written comic.
He also penned the legendary Batman saga The Dark Knight Returns and an original series called Sin City. And Miller had this to say on the topic. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a political perspective in life if you're awake. But also, when I started the very first Dark Knight, it just struck me as odd that comics were so divorced from everything in the real world. And that here we have all this cartooning talent and we're not using it to do what cartoonists are most known for, which is political cartoons. So to me, it was just a natural marriage. And it also gave the series a Greek chorus. That is, a way for the rest of the world to react to Batman being out there. True to Miller's philosophy, The Dark Knight Returns was saturated with political and social commentary. This is also why Superman became an iconic symbol of excellence, to be used as propaganda against America's enemies. And Marvel's very own Stan Lee once said, "Marvel has always been and always will be a reflection of the world right outside our window." Meaning, real-world social issues and politics are fair game for superhero conflicts. This is Captain America punching Hitler, the Punisher fighting the IRA, and most importantly, the X-Men combating prejudice. X-Men in particular have become the go-to example when proving that comics have always been political. As the legend goes, the great Stan Lee secretly forged the X-Men in the fires of Mount Marvel, and that Lee intended it to be the most hard-hitting political commentary ever.
No one ever said... Here's what I don't understand by all this. why do they always go for this argument? No one says Stan Lee did anything with the X-Men beyond create them. Because, well, I know why they do this. Because it's an easy straw man to build up and then bring down. Stan Lee is not responsible for making the X-Men what they are. He didn't really care about the X-Men. He made them as a filler book because he didn't want to come up with new origins for superheroes every time. It was when Chris Claremont took the book over that the books became what we now know them as. And you never see these grifters contend with that. You see them pay lip service to that, but they don't really engage with the ideas all that much. But let's take a look at what they have to say. Maybe he, I mean, listen, I thought Eric July wasn't going to mention Chris Claremont. He surprised me. So maybe I'll be wrong here too. I mean, he didn't do a good job of it, but he still referenced it.
By making the main characters mutants in place of minorities, and by modeling the two mutant leaders after Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, he was able to force the conversation.
Again, the same argument that people keep making. Again, by creating these strawman arguments, they can deconstruct the idea that comics were always political. Because the X-Men in particular being... And again, no one says that the X-Men were from their birth political. Most X-Men fans who read the comics know the early issues were a little rougher about the messaging, and over time became something different. That's how a lot of these comics were. And that's how a lot of this storytelling was written. But for whatever reason, these grifters will always try to create a false narrative about this. Oh, it's pretty low? My volume is that low. Okay, let me just adjust that then. Okay, how's my volume now? Is that better? Okay, let's hope for the best. Hopefully that improves my volume there. Okay, cool. So let's keep going.
Of bigotry onto all those who read it. So the legend goes, because modern writers like Kelly Sue DeConnick and her friends need Stan Lee to have been an iconic activist writer, because they want to become iconic activist writers. They need Stan Lee to be the great progressive hero who defied the mean old bigoted conservatives and bravely wrote a story of anti-bigotry under the veil of the superhero genre.
Why do they need that? Okay, here's I don't understand your argument here. No one okay. People saying that comics have always been political does not mean that Stan Lee in particular had to have written anything political himself. And again, that specifically does not mean that X-Men had to be the one that was specifically political. You reference Captain America, right? Stan Lee didn't write Captain America. That was before Stan Lee even came around. You mentioned Superman, right? Well, Superman was before Stan Lee. So again, none of this has to do with anything. You're saying Stan Lee had to have been the one to say this. Why? Why Stan Lee in particular? Why not Bill Finger? Why not, the professor who made Wonder Woman? Why not Jack Kirby himself, who also wrote a ton of the X-Men comics because of the Marvel method, where, again, a lot of that writing was influenced by Jack Kirby. I'm not getting into the whole Stan Lee versus Jack Kirby discussion. It's a whole other talk for another day. But I am saying this. By making this straw man, what you're doing is implying that Stan Lee had to have done this because Stan Lee has to have been the forger of the ring. Stan Lee doesn't have to be anything. Stan Lee just did a few things that were very influential in comic history, of course. But in no way was he the sole architect of the Marvel comics of the 60s already. Nor was he the sole architect of the Marvel comics in the 40s when it first started up, with Timely Comics and Captain America, the first Human Torch, Namor, etc. But, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, they based Superman off the immigrant story. Off Moses, off their experience as Jews. Jack Kirby was going to, as the comments have pointed out, Jack Kirby was going to box racists outside Marvel's company building. Again, why the emphasis on Stan Lee? It's because it's the only name that your audience will definitely recognize. Aside from your stand-in for all modern writers, Kelly Sue over there. He was one guy in the vast body of work that is the medium of comics. And he's the one the whole linchpin of modern comics being political lies upon? Get out of here.
seeing a political conversation on his readers and spreading awareness throughout the country. And the current year Marvel Defenders will repeat the legend this way because they too want to force conversations and craft political narratives rather than interesting ones.
But I don't say that, so what are you going to say that convinces me that you're right?
But here's the thing, if Marvel Comics has always been political, and more to the point, if Stan Lee had always steered the company in a progressive direction, then what makes today any different? Remember DeConnick's words, I'm sorry to break this to you, but Captain America is a social justice warrior. Remember, Captain America's first appearance—
Wait, hang on, what? What? What makes my... What does that mean, dude? What the fuck is your point?
was in 1940, and if DeConnick is claiming that Captain America has always championed progressive politics and that Marvel heroes were social justice warriors over 80 years ago, then what changed? After all,
What do you mean, what changed? They were modern for the time. They were progressive for the 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s. What changed? Time passed, dude. Do you think progress is a static concept? No, get out of here, man. Listen, in when the first Captain America issue come out? Was that 39, 38? It was in March, I know that. We were not at war with Hitler. And he is punching Hitler in the face. That right there is progress, right? If that was in 1942, it would be war propaganda. In 1939, it's a message about fighting totalitarianism, fascism, Nazis. That is progress. But progress changes over time because things progress, right? What was progressive last year is not progressive today because we've gotten to there. It's like saying, hey, you driving to Canada for a trip? And you're like, yeah, we're driving to Canada. You get to Canada and you ask, hey, you driving to Canada for a trip? I'm like, no. And you're like, well, what changed? We got to Canada. What are you talking about, dude? Ridiculous.
The legend of Stan Lee's X-Men holds true, and it truly was a blatant parallel to the civil rights movement, then Marvel Comics have always reflected DeConnick's politics, haven't they? After all, Stan Lee's Marvel has always been political and always been progressive, right?
No, you idiot. No, you dumb person. Because she was born after the comics came out. How can the comics from the 60s reflect the politics of a modern person if the comics existed as a reflection of the 60s? It's like saying, hey, the news in 1960s reported on real life. Why then is the news not still talking about the March on Washington or the Vietnam War? What changed? Decades of time. Freaking ridiculous.
Right? So on one hand, legacy Marvel fans have no reason to be angry by the direction DeConnick and her friends have taken Marvel because these comics have always been political. To quote,
exactly. Right? This is always when people are like, would you please get your politics out of my comic books? I'm like, what comic books are you reading? Where is the apolitical comic book that you're reading? Like, I want to go back to the comic books we were reading in my youth. The 70s, when they were incredibly political.
Combine that with their view on Captain America, and it seems Marvel has not only always been political, but progressively political. From the nerdy Spider-Man to the godly Thor to the blind Daredevil to the gritty Luke Cage, who actually was the star of a 70s era comic and began his story jailed for a crime he didn't commit. And of course, the X-Men, exploring a variety of perspectives from a variety of different people, all while emphasizing good morals and a push for justice. Yet, on the other hand, Marvel apparently catered to only one specific group of readers who are all bigots and who are now furious that Marvel has taken a sudden, dramatic shift towards progressive politics. To quote,
what? Whatever. This is giving me a headache already.
Some of the men with short memories who are so threatened by myself and my female colleagues and some of the books that we make that bring different perspectives, who feel that we are taking something away from them. Like, I have no interest in taking your books. You continue to make, we continue to make all of the books. You can have the books that you want. but I'd like there to be some others too.
Yeah, that's
In
fair
short, angry Marvel fans are hypocrites because Marvel has always been progressively political, but also these fans are just angry because Marvel has now chosen to bring in new perspectives and become progressively political.
He's framing these like they're two contrary statements, but they're not. 1970s comics were extremely political. You ever read Green Lantern and Green Arrow, their comic, you'd know that. Like, Luke Cage, you reference. Yeah, a lot of his comics dealt with racism. Spider-Man dealt with drug addiction from the time when drugs were a big deal. Captain America abandoned his bangle and stripes in protest of Vietnam. Like, he's repeating this point because he knows he has nothing else. But if he sounds intelligent when he says it, you might not notice he's not saying anything. It's been 7 minutes of this video. What is his point? To repeat the same thing over and over again to make the other side sound ridiculous without him actually having to do the legwork of actually making anything that's important.
Got it? I hope so, because if you don't, you're a bigot Nazi bigot. I mean, you'd be right that it doesn't make any sense, but they'll still call you a bigot Nazi bigot. Sometimes Marvel has always been politically progressive. Sometimes Marvel has only ever catered to conservative white men. Sometimes Marvel has always done both at the same time. You must try harder, Winston.
Thank you, Meow Neon, for the super chat. Let's take a look. Remember the same people got mad at the Netflix Sandman adaptation for being too woke? Lol, grifter's gonna grift. Yeah, you're right. The Sandman adaptation got a bunch of people angry at it because it dared have Death be a black woman. Or adapt the comic authentically. Or change the sexualities or races of certain characters. In The Sandman, a book that is famously mature, an adaptation that was penned and managed by Neil Gaiman, its creator. So the creators signed off on all these changes, but the grifters were acting like, oh, it was against the comics. Well, the guy who made the comics wrote it. So, and the adaptation turned out fantastic. People love The Sandman because it's a great adaptation of a great comic. But again, this is the grifter model, right? They say a bunch of things without actually having to say anything tangible. And they just go on and on and on and on. When I make my videos, I get kind of worried sometimes if I'm going on too long without making a good point, and I cut out a lot of what I've actually read because I don't want to waste anyone's time when they are listening to it. This is like cutting room floor conversation, except it's by design. But what design? The design to put you in a trance, to make you think that he's saying something, but really he's playing to your pre-existing biases.
It's not easy to become sane. Obviously, there is a big difference between older Stan Lee Marvel and new corporate-approved Marvel sanitized for a modern audience. And it isn't politics, but political bias. Political bias driven by massive, unchecked egos. How do we know? Because the legend isn't true. The truth about Stan Lee's...
Yeah, but no one said it was true. You said it was true. No one who's a fan of the X-Men comics, who's read the X-Men comics, will ever tell you that Stan Lee wrote the comics to be political. He wrote the comics because he wanted an easy solution for mutant powers, and the politics came as he worked on the story. It was one of those things that he didn't intend on creating, but when he became aware he was creating it, he did lean into it a bit, but it's more the Chris Claremont run that really plays with it. So if your entire argument is just that Stan Lee didn't intend the X-Men to be political, well then I have to ask you this. What's the point? Right? You're acting like progressive politics, which by the nature are progressive and have to evolve because they have to be always one step ahead of what we're talking about right now, is a static concept from the past. Well, things change, so what are you going to do? The comics of yesteryear that were progressive, by the time you read them, probably in the 90s or 80s, they had already progressed past that point already, Like, that was the nature of things. So, to you, it was old values because they were old values when you read them. Easy explanation. Your entire video crumbles with that. Not calling you a racist, not calling you a bigot, I'm just calling you a grifter. Because you are deliberately obscuring the information to present a point that you want to relay to your audience. That the SJWs are nuts. They're out of their mind. They're who knows why they do that stuff. But the reality is this. It's all manufactured. Your entire narrative is manufactured on a straw man argument that no one's actually saying. Oh, except for some people who don't read the comics. Which, okay, you're going to argue against a non-comic reader about the comics. That's fair game and probably pretty easy to do. But in that case, you're just shooting fish in a barrel.
X-Men is that it was never meant as some grand social commentary set to change the world. The legend was retold that way after the fact, and was embraced by modern Marvel because it painted Stan Lee as a like-minded creator, and therefore justified their own actions as they desecrated our beloved heroes and turned their world into a progressive fantasy land built on oppression porn. They rewrote Stan Lee's legacy from a guy who aimed to sell comics and into that of a political activist, and they did it all for the sake of vanity. I mentioned before that the outrage was caused by political bias and the writer's ego, and it very...
What does vanity have to do with anything? Like, dude, what are you talking about? Genuinely, what are you talking about? You say words and you act like they mean anything, but vanity, what does vanity have to do with anything we're discussing right now?
Much was, but I assert that the event sparking the blowback was the desecration of our heroes. When DeConnick said, "I have no interest in taking your books, you continue to have all of the books, you can have all of the books that you want, but I'd like there to be others too," her words seem reasonable. After all, DeConnick also wrote an original work called Bitch Planet, which was packed with DeConnick's politics. The story revolves around women who are arrested for being non-compliant, basically a feminist oppression porn power fantasy. As CBR's Caitlin Chappell said, it focuses on real-world systems that oppress LGBTQ women, women of color, and women who don't conform to society. The main protagonists refuse to accept a system which sees their sexualities, bodies, race, and genders as a threat to society. If you didn't know what a social justice story was about, this is pretty much it. In principle, it claims to uplift and empower historically marginalized groups.
Bitch Planet's a pretty good comic. I recommend you read it if you want to see something that's different. I don't think it's great. I think it's okay. It's a good comic, I should say. But what does it? But this is more about Kelly Sue DeConnick than about the X-Men. This is 10 minutes into an hour and 8-minute long video. One that I don't think I'll be able to finish because I am having a hard time listening to this man's boring, dull voice. And I have a boring, dull voice. So if I'm telling you your voice is boring, it's boring. You're talking and rambling and rambling and rambling. Get to the fucking point already.
And under the social justice umbrella, this ranges from women to racial minorities, people without voices now given voice. However, in practice, social justice stories are little more than oppression porn disguised as social commentary. Noble oppressed minorities rising up against the cartoonishly bigoted villains trying to hold them down. Like a Barbie's Dreamhouse version of the 90s. When the pizza guy arrives to a hot and ready harlot, what proceeds is not a reflection of real life, but an exaggerated version of real life, giving you a thin veneer of story and lots of terrible acting to focus on an adult-oriented fantasy. Social justice oppression porn runs on similar rules, giving you a thin veneer of story and lots of terrible writing to focus on an oppression-oriented fantasy, especially a big-budget strawman comic slapped with the Marvel label. While DeConnick's original work does just that, it wasn't the core.
What does anything about Bitch Planet have to do with the X-Men? This is 10 minutes. He's only obsessed over Kelly Sue DeConnick, who, as far as I know, hasn't written an X-Men comic. At least not one that comes to mind. Maybe she's written something. I'm sure she's written something, but I don't think she's she's not known for X-Men. Oh, thank you for the compliment, by the way. So, Mara, about my voice. I appreciate that. Here's the problem with all this. He's just going on, and he's only going to cover ground that Eric July covered in 10 minutes. Why am I looking forward? Why do I miss Eric July in this situation? At least he knew how to sell something. At least he had a salesman trying to talk to you. This is like a boring grift.
Pour the fandom uprising. No one seems to mind that much how politically biased a writer gets in their own work, as long as it's...
Look, about the other comics out there for you, again, look at... Well, Kelly Sue DeConnick was working on, Captain Marvel and all that. You had the Dan Slott run of Spider-Man. Pretty good run, I think. I think Dan Slott's run was pretty solid. You had the Venom. You had Venom, which was incredible. You had, again, you had Thor. You had the God Butcher. You had even, I mean, I know they can't stand the Jane Foster Thor run, but that was a great run too. Really interesting stuff played with the mythology. Very tragic. There were a couple panels here and there that these types keep circulating, but the rest of the book, if they read past those panels, was pretty solid. Ms. Marvel was pretty fantastic. You had the Inhuman stuff was kind of cruddy. I didn't care for a lot of that was going on, but like again, we get Immortal Hulk. Great run. So if you don't like what Kelly Sue DeConnick is working on, they are comics for you that were going on at the same time. But because you were so hyper fixated on a couple panels out of context, you act like a character like Carol Danvers, someone who didn't have a significant presence in comics prior to the reinvention. You act like someone writing Carol Danvers a certain way was some big loss for you. But were you reading Carol Danvers before that? You know who did include Carol Danvers? The X-Men, because Chris Claremont wrote her well. But again, and I love the Jane Foster Thor myself too. I think it's a great run. But these types obviously don't. But even then, there's good stuff in there that you wouldn't read if they actually opened their minds and read a good book. Or at least a book that was a little outside their comfort zone. But they won't. They just focus on the key panels to get angry about it on the internet. They won't actually read the whole story. They'll read an issue, search for the parts they can talk about the most, rant about that for an hour, and then call it a day. And then make, I don't know, 43,000 views on it. That's a lot of views for this video.
Uniform throughout and doesn't change halfway through. It was when DeConnick and her friends began turning beloved Marvel heroes into angry, hateful activists and
Did you ever read a Carol Danvers story before Captain Marvel came out? Be honest. Did you even know who Carol Danvers was before Captain Marvel, the comic, came out? I did, because I read the X-Men comics when Rogue stole her powers. But I don't think you did, because you would know that after Rogue stole her powers, she was in a coma for like several years in real time. Then an alcoholic. Then had no power. Well, sorry, then had no powers. Then an alcoholic. Then binary. Then an alcoholic again. Then House of M came out, turned her life around. Then Civil War happened. At none of these points is Carol Danvers the beloved character that you claim that she is. She is a character, one that existed for a long time, but always part of the group. This is the story that put Carol Danvers into a position where she was more front and center. She became the Wonder Woman of Marvel, for a lack of a comparison. I think Storm's a better example of like the most iconic female character in Marvel. But again, Carol Danvers was a great character, is a great character, and this put her in public eye. So you can't say you stole the character. They opened up new stories for the characters to be told, for the character to be told.
Chains of stories from heroic battles for justice into blatant oppression porn that legacy Marvel fans became infuriated with current Marvel trends. DeConnick, after all, is noted for recreating Captain Marvel into an ultra-feminist power fantasy. In fact, it's her version—
made her into an ultra-feminist power fantasy? You didn't read the comic in the 60s, did you? The fact that she was as powerful as she was as Miss Marvel is that feminist. Anyway, this is pointless. This is like arguing with a wall.
That allegedly inspired the 2019 Captain Marvel film. The one where they turned Nick Fury into a—
you're just doing the greatest hits. I'm going to cut ahead. This is pointless. There's nothing here that actually talks about Captain Marvel. Okay, here we go. Social justice work in practice. Maybe he'll have a point here.
From fans. DeConnick highlighted the goal of social justice being to uplift the voices of the unheard. And this is true. It's so true, in fact, that Marvel went on to create Marvel Voices, which was intended to highlight creators of everyone's favorite categories of oppressed minorities, which gave us this little story. The She-Hulk story, Punishment, opens with the bad guy going to jail. Normally, that opening would make this tale a very short story indeed. But we're dealing with woke Marvel at its strongest here. So the man going to prison for 18 months on an assault charge isn't good enough. She-Hulk heroically destroys the truck, nearly killing the guard, just so the victim could get revenge. Keep in mind, the bad guy has already been judged and punished, so the plot takes us away from superheroics and—
Are you implying that superheroes act outside the law? Oh no, news at 11. You would hate this one comic from Spider-Man, the Back in Black story, where Spider-Man goes to Kingpin in prison and beats the snot out of him. I mean, he's in jail. He's been tried. That's not good for superheroes to do, because revenge. I'm sure you have no issue with that comic, though. Can't imagine why.
More towards
Again,
vengeance.
this isn't X-Men. At no point has he talked about X-Men beyond saying, oh, Stan Lee made X-Men. This is all just nonsense. He's complaining about a couple of comics that no one cares about. Who cares? I mean, I'll be honest with you. Marvel Voices, it's a good comic. But, like, that's not the kind of story you come back to years later and go, oh, this iconic story. No, it's an anthology story, a chance to get underrepresented writers in the door so they can prove themselves. And then it's almost like an audition, right? You tell a good story, Marvel likes it, does well, gets remembered. You get a good job at writing a new Marvel comic, and you get a good job going forward. Or it's an opportunity for established writers to play around with some ideas that he couldn't pitch otherwise. It's a good start. It's a good gig. It's fun. It's straightforward. This is not something worth getting angry about how many ever years later, especially in a video about the X-Men. We are 13 minutes into this video, and he has not actually talked about the X-Men beyond saying Stan Lee made the X-Men and Magneto is a Holocaust survivor. And that's it. Waifu Guide Handbook. Social justice characters aren't heroes. I'm just skimming ahead because I want to get the X-Men bits. Modern creators think that... Just get to the X-Men. Oh, here we go. Finally, looks like we're talking about X-Men here.
A supposed political guru who changes the landscape with their hard-hitting stories supposedly filled with current year's social commentary. In their view, reflecting the world outside your window. There's a reason why Salon called Bitch Planet a raw, pulpy, dystopian parable. These mainstream creators see political lecturing as an essential element of brilliant writing. And of course, so many become so desperate to be seen as brilliant, they skew away from brilliance. But wait, wasn't it true that Stan Lee held the same views? Didn't he make the X-Men a political allegory of the civil rights movement to combat oppression? What's really so different about social justice stories from the normal superhero stories written by Stan Lee's Marvel? Is there a difference? Well, there are several issues, but I think the main one can be boiled down to one word: dishonesty. Remember when I noted it?
No one is being dishonest. Stan Lee made the X-Men. He made it so that mutants would be an easy solution to the superhero question. Stan Lee realized as he was writing it that there was some parallels between the civil rights movement and his work. Kind of leaned into it at times, especially with the Sentinels when they came in. But Chris Claremont is the one who really executed the idea. No one's being dishonest. They either don't know, in which case they just don't know enough about the comics, or B, you're misrepresenting what they say. It's that simple. And you really need to talk to a therapist about your obsession with Kelly Sue DeConnick. I don't think Kelly Sue DeConnick thinks about Kelly Sue DeConnick as much as you do, buddy. Just saying.
It seemed like DeConnick was rewriting history to justify what she did.
When did Bitch Planet come out? When was Bitch Planet? That was like what? I think that was like 2013. According to my searches, it came out. It debuted in 2014. Bitch Planet came out 10 years before this video came out. 10 years. And you're still talking about it. Just want to point it out there. 10 years ago. And you're still obsessing over it.
To Carol Danvers, notable author, fellow longtime social justice activist, and writer for both Captain America and Black Panther, Ta-Nehisi Coates once said, when you're writing any sort of fiction, you should be telling the truth as you see it. And I don't know how you do that without commenting on the broader society. You should be telling the truth as you see it, rather than the truth. See, the truth as you see it isn't the truth at all. It's merely...
You should, when you're writing... Hang on a second. No, but you changed the quote there. You read it differently. Listen, look at look at what's written and listen to what he says. It's different.
And I don't know how you do that without commenting on the broader society. You should be telling the truth as you see it, rather than the truth.
See? Right there. The truth as you see it. There is no mention of the truth because that's not the case. There is no the truth. The truth as you see it is your worldview. That is how you're talking about the narrative. If you see the world through your lens, you should reflect that lens in your storytelling. It's a very natural thing. It's like the concept, write what you know, right? Write what you know, write what you see, write the world as you see it. There is no objective truth. It doesn't exist. Because if anything was objective in truth, there would be some sort of, outside perspective that we can all share in and hone in on the idea. The truth that this guy, this literature devil, is going to say, is that the truth is actually his truth. It's the truth as he sees it. It's not the truth as there is some objective sense, because he is centering his opinion as the honest truth. And as a result, he's trying to deconstruct the messages that others are relaying in their works. What's dishonest about this, to use your language on this one, Devil, is that you are implying that your truths are unique, different, stand apart. But they don't.
See, the truth as you see it isn't the truth at all. It's merely your perspective and not the full story. Being a good writer, or even a good artist in general, is about empathy. And as much as the word has been corrupted by Twitter activists, it remains true. A good artist must be willing to empathize with others, even if they're people he might disagree with or even despise. The world outside your window isn't simply the world as you see.
So here's what I don't understand with this. He's talking about empathy all this time right now, right? He spent 20 minutes talking about how gay women in comics were bad and how he couldn't, and how he's upset with it because it went against his politics. And now he's talking about empathy? Give me a break, my dude. You're so full of it. You're acting like, oh, well, the other writers have to be empathetic towards the antagonists that they write. Okay, well, they can be, and many have been. That's not really in question here. But you just spent the last 20 minutes refusing to empathize with the perspectives of other people. Don't talk to me about empathy. You wasted 20 minutes of your audience's time showing how unempathetic you are. Honesty.
But the world as it actually is. Dishonest storytelling uses narrative elements in far more petty and biased ways. Taking one's limited perspective and writing it as the entire truth is dishonest. Like when Ta-Nehisi Coates not so subtly turned notable psychologist Jordan Peterson into Red Skull. This is why
noted psychologist. Yeah, more like noted advocate of all meat diets destroying your life. Ridiculous. Yeah, whatever. It's social satire, Every public figure gets satirized in the media. All of them. No exceptions. That's how it is. And again, you act like this is some big deal, but it's not. Your perspective on this is very lazy, honestly. Because rather than look at the works as a collective whole, you're taking isolated things that you don't agree with, that goes against your truth, and as a result, acting like this is some reflective mistake of the writers themselves. The problem is, you're being dishonest. By your own internal logic, you are being dishonest to your audience.
Social justice writing, and politically biased Marvel comics in particular, have been called propaganda. Information, especially of a biased or misleading nature.
I'm sorry, what? Avengers Endgame is a liberal war cry. Think you can really just slide that one by us, huh? Thought we just wouldn't notice? What the frick is this? This is hilarious. Who wrote that? Liberal war cry. That's dumb. That's a dumb title. And probably a worse article.
Used to promote or publicize a particular political cause or point of view. Though Jordan Peterson being compared to Red Skull made for some funny memes, Couch's perspective saw Jordan Peterson as a villainous manipulator leading young men to the far right. However, the reality is...
No one's going to read that, buddy. No one can read that fine print. That could be anything on there. Could be the recipe for, a good chili recipe for all we know. How is anyone supposed to read that works cited? Those are, and by the way, I have read that article, and the idea of it is the pipeline. The idea that if you read one thing and they're connected to another person, again, which is a whole thing, when we discussed that in another video I just did, except I didn't make the quotes so small you can't even read them. And again, you're not really arguing against the pipeline. You're saying, oh, people think that Jordan Peterson's bad. You're not explaining what their argument is. Because if you explain the argument, you'd realize you have no argument. Because the pipeline is not simply about, oh, hey, this person's bad, therefore makes other people bad. No, it's about how the internet algorithm pushes things further and further and further along. The more you engage with a certain type of media, the more pushes more extreme versions of that media. If you read the article, you'd know that, as opposed to just, key searching for Jordan Peterson's name in an article that looks intelligent.
Jordan Peterson is not a Nazi, but turning him into one affirms the artist's bias and personal hatred for Jordan Peterson, all to create Red Skull as an allegory for Jordan Peterson. Not the truth, but the truth as coat.
No. It means it's making fun of Jordan Peterson by drawing a comparison. And even then, it's not an allegory. As your own article says, Jordan Peterson said he inspired the character. Jordan Peterson is claiming he inspired the character. Like, obviously, 10 Rules for Life, that's a direct reference to Jordan Peterson, sure. But the Nazis did do that. They did have rules that they set for their audience, for their members to follow. That was a thing they did. So, yeah, you could make it an argument. I would make it the argument too. But to say it's like a one-to-one is ridiculous. It's just a little joke.
Saw it. Honest writing will paint a fictional character with real-life evil. Dishonest writing will paint a real-life person with fictional evil. But enough talking around the subject. Let's see social justice.
Okay, let's look at this for a second. Honest writing paints a fictional character with real-life evil. Dishonest writing paints a real-life person with fictional evil. About that then. How many works can I... So you're saying stuff like, say, South Park is dishonest writing. You're probably also going to say that The Simpsons is dishonest writing. You're probably going to say... Because Arnold Schwarzenegger is president at one point. You're probably going to... And also, you could put anything after honest writing versus dishonest writing. You could put any number of messages after that. Doesn't change a thing. You're being really weird with how you're phrasing it.
Storytelling in action. Let's check in with Immortal Hulk, She-Hulk, and most importantly, the X-Men Green arc.
What does any of this have to do with Stan Lee and the X-Men?
Fans of the Marvel Cinematic Universe have taken issue with an infamous scene from the She-Hulk show.
Oh my god! Just get. This is how much is in this? 20 minutes. This is a video about the X-Men. This is a video about the X-Men. You barely talk about the X-Men. You're talking around the X-Men. Is that how thin your actual argument is? That you can't actually engage with the core mechanics of your ideas? Eric July made a video in 10 minutes, and while it annoyed me and while I thought it was vapid, he at least got to the point. You're babbling. You're not making a point. You're just going in circles on and on and on and on and on. Get to a message already. Speed it up. Stop talking about nonsense. Get to the X-Men. I'm here for the X-Men takes.
So-called rites of passage, which occupy such a prominent place in the life of a primitive society. Ceremonials of birthing, naming, puberty, marriage, burial.
What does Joseph Campbell... Yeah, I'm skipping ahead, I know, but like, are you really going to miss anything? You really going to miss anything in this video? He's talking about Joseph Campbell. It's with the civil rights movement here. Come on. Oh my god.
Peggy's real issues include having to earn respect rather than just having it given to her. And...
Did you read Immortal Hulk? No, you didn't. What am I talking about? I can't do this one. I'm skimming ahead. Look at this. This is all like this is all just random. Okay. Here we go. Again, this is all just nonsense. And again, all of this is covered in things we've already articulated. We've already said that the X-Men were not created as a direct civil rights metaphor. We've said that already. That's done. We've countered that point by saying we don't think it was a core point. We've said that Malcolm X and MLK were not direct parallels for Magneto and Professor X. We've established that. We've said that in our chat just now. So we don't need to argue that point. We've already said it. We don't acknowledge that as a factor. So what do you have to say? And again, the dishonesty here is obscuring, right? Obscuring this through runtime and babbling and circular reasoning with objective statements presented that aren't all that objective. I miss Lily Orchard. After watching this, I really miss Lily Orchard. Yep, I miss Lily Orchard, and I'm going to use this one too for a future video I am working on. Just gonna collect that real quick. No reason, fellas. You'll see next week where this is gonna be working on. I'm just gonna add that to my list of things. The problem is this is just so boring. He's not making a point that matters. He's just saying things and saying things and saying things, but doesn't actually say anything. This is so boring. And he's not going to, okay, do you really want to see the rest of this? Does anyone else want to actually watch this? Because I have no intention. I'm done. I cannot with this video. It is miserable. Yeah, no, Lily Orchard and again, I'm not getting into her life, which is all messy. Lily Orchard, for all of her faults, for all of Lily Orchard's faults, she is never boring. There is always something to discuss about her body of work. How is it? That's why people like Lily Orchard stand out and this one doesn't, because she's at least so chaotic that it's interesting to discuss. This is just rambling and so dull. It's so dull. Ugh. Like, say what you will. This is so boring. And she's so obsessed with, like, not Lily Orchard, I'm sorry. This guy's so obsessed with Kelly Sue DeConnick. Like, what did she do to you personally? Like, it sounds like she personally hurt you in some way. I don't know. Was she the one that had the video about Delicious Dungeons? Yeah, and I'm still upset by that video, by the way. That video will get its reckoning one day. But I'll tell you this. At least it's worth discussing. It opens up a topic of discussion. This is just waiting for them to get to a point, and a lot of it going like, no one's saying that, no one's saying that, no one's saying that, dude. Whereas with Lily Orchard, you know, it's chaotic and nuts and wild and out of its mind. That's what we need more. No, we don't need more Lily Orchards. Actually, I should hold myself back. She's a predator. She's a predator. She says horrible things. But like, at least it's an interesting bad take as opposed to a boring bad take. This is just so like, why do they hold on to this? Like, why do they hold on to this anger for so long? It's 10 years, dude. Get over Bitch Planet. And like he's focusing on like individual scenes and hyper focusing on that because if he talks outside of those individual scenes, he will lose the plot. He will lose track of what the idea of the story is. It's really annoying, honestly, because it just proves that someone can become successful based purely on looking at a camera and not actually saying anything of any real material value, just rambling endlessly. Yeah, Lily Orchard and Literature Devil, just you pick your poison. Yeah, and Lily Orchard is the poison I'd pick, quite frankly. And I'll do it again, too. I don't understand how they can just do that. Do Comic Mate next. Who's Comic Mate? Do I dare do one more? Do comics matter with your boys? Is that frickin' the Comics Gate guy? He's still around, huh? This is, for those of you who don't know, this is this guy. He was an obsessed individual who was just. He's the one who started the whole Comicsgate thing. Oh, of course he did. Of course he jumped on that train. Still obsessed with Renfamous over here with that whole thing. Really obsessed with her. Tom Taylor, Joe Glass. Why they harp on Joe so much? Joe's a good guy. I swear, I'm half expecting to see my face on here. Joe Glass again. Why they harp on Joe? Joe's a good dude. Of course, these guys are ridiculous. Again, multiple of this. All Heather Antos, Gail Simone, poor Joe Glass, Morph. Talking about Morph. What? Why are you attacking N.D. Stevenson like that? That's ridiculous. Yeah. Again, it's all the same stuff. They're just harking. DeConnick again. All they're doing is just harping on the same individuals, and they're not getting a ton of views either, I might add. Like, they get a decent amount of views. Eric July is now a target, apparently. It's a sad state of affairs, really, with these. The more you look at this, like, it's the same thumbnail again, a bunch of the same thumbnails, still over that picture. It's all very depressing, like how obsessed they are with the same 15 things and just make videos. This is all 6 months, by the way. We're only at 6 months. What is with the pigs? Well, I think it was Mark Millar, the writer of Hitman, not Hit Girl, Kick-Ass, the Law of the Ultimates from Marvel, who called his critics cancel pigs, and the anti-SJW types really jumped with that and ran with it. Now, for some reason, they're particularly obsessed with Renfamous and Magdalene. I always feel I'm gonna get her name wrong. Magdalene Visaggio, who is a trans writer. They're obsessed with her for some reason. They always style them based on that. Anyway, that's a whole other discussion. That dates back to when I was working with CBR more extensively, in terms of like that whole discussion. But then again, what are you gonna do? Yeah, Kick-Ass never got a TV show invitation. It seemed like it was open for that. Yeah, this guy is just a grifter of the highest order. Sorry about going off of my, like, a tangent looking at all that. It's just sad seeing that, because it's like every day they're releasing another video. And, like, they do pretty well, apparently. They get, like, decent views, and they make enough of them a day. It adds up. But, like, it just seems like they're, like, chasing that grift again and not making content that's, like, meaningful. And because I always want to go with the intention of I want to see people improve, even people I don't like. You know, I would love to see people I don't like improve, because I want to see them be better. You know, that's what I want to see. And I think all criticism can be applied to develop a person to make them better, but they won't grow. These people won't grow, and I know that for a fact, because they don't want to listen to what I have to say, and they don't believe I can offer them any advice or say something that might benefit them in some way. And I accept that. I can live with that. The thing is, they know their grift can be done if it's for the cheap and for minimal effort, because they're lazy, and they know that the effect of their grift is they get people angry. You don't have to think. Just say something angry and they make you think. Whereas I don't think that's right. LMAO, Gail isn't a cancel pig. She submitted the bill on the second he pushed. Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, exactly. And most of them didn't do the things that they're indicating they said. Most of them were like bent over backwards for, you know. But again, that's another discussion. When your grift doesn't require much effort, yeah, that's what it comes down to. It's unfortunate. Gwenpool was a good comic, though. Yeah, this is a lot of nonsense. I think I'm going to wrap it up in a few minutes, I think. I don't think I could take much more of looking at the bowels of bad X-Men comics, but bad X-Men takes after that one. That really took a lot out of me. But it's interesting, I think, how we can see a lot of how these grifters think and operate based on their videos and their bad takes. Maybe the root of their feelings, despite the grift, reactionaries don't think people can grow or be different in a way that counters their worldview, so they spiral even further to maintain it. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point, Hermit. Yeah, I think they just think people are static. That's what they think. Progressives don't change. They think progressives are a static concept that don't evolve. And it's unfortunate because they can do so much. People can be so much more if they just... I'm a humanist, ultimately. I think people are capable of great things. They're capable of terrible things, but they're capable of great things, too. And it's unfortunate that so many of these types just don't... They get in their own way. It's really sad. But I digress. Anyway, it's been nice suffering with all of you. I hope you all endured that as well as I could. And as Mrs. who is spiraling pretty badly in the grifting space here in Newfoundland. Oh, that's rough. That's rough. Anyway, so she's alt-right was part of the convoy in 2020. Oh, there you go. That's it. That's the pipeline for you, nutshell. The pipeline is to start with like grifting videos, and YouTube recommends them more and more and more. I'm going to have to take the next several hours to purge my feed of any and all of this grifter nonsense. 2 videos will be enough to isolate me from anything fun, and I'm going to have to change it so I focus on the good stuff. Anyway, that's all the time and patience I have for today. Be back later this week. I have a video coming out this Friday about Batman and Spider-Man that will be quite entertaining. But until then, take care, everyone.